both like this game quite a bit, so definitely going to be exciting. But Orange, what are we competing for today? Because I know that there's some pretty cool prizes.
I'm really excited to see, because I don't even know if I've seen the prizes yet, but I'm excited to see what they look like. All right, so for fourth place prizing, you get a certificate with your name on it and all that cool stuff. So that is fourth place. For third place, you get a Trick Moon, and you get one winner PR card, and you get one booster display with the certificate that you would get if you were to be in fourth place. And then in second place, we have 2 winner PR cards plus 1 booster display plus the certificates. And if you are to take it all the way home, you can go with first place and get 4 winner PR cards plus a booster display plus a certificate. So you pretty much just get it all in one. And that is the prizing for Bureau this time. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and take it to the format video where you can learn more about Cardfight Vanguard Overdress. Let's go ahead and see how that is.
Cardfight Vanguard is a 2-player card game where you take on the role of a Vanguard and lead your ally units in a battle to victory. This video will explain the rules of Cardfight Vanguard. First, we have the types of cards. Vanguard can be divided into 2 different types of cards. Unit cards have power and shield values and can be called to the field. Order cards are a variety of commands that use strategies, items, or magic. Each type of card has different information written on them. First, let's take a look at unit cards. There are 2 types of unit cards. First, we have normal units. Normal units are the basic units that are called to the field to battle. Let's learn more about the 4 numbers written on the card. Grade, the level of strength of a card. Power, the attack power of a card. This value is used when it battles. Shield, the defense power a card has when it guards its allies. Critical, the amount of damage a card can deal to your opponent. Some unit cards have an icon at the top right corner and are known as trigger units. Trigger units can not only be called to the field to battle, but also activate unique effects when revealed for trigger checks. Next, we have order cards. Order cards do not have any power or shield values, but have various powerful abilities instead. Different cards have different abilities and activation timings. Some are used during your turn, while others are used in your opponent's turn. Preparing your deck. Let's prepare a deck to be used for the card fight. A deck can be constructed with a total of 50 cards, including 16 trigger units. Up to 4 copies of each card can be used. Choose 4 unit cards from your deck consisting of 1 of each, grade 0, 1, 2, and 3 to be used as your ride deck. Win condition. Attack and guard repeatedly, and the first to deal 6 damage to their opponent wins. Card fight setup. Let's take a look at the playmat where the card fight takes place. There are 3 types of circles where you can place your unit cards on the field. Vanguard circle. The unit placed here is called the Vanguard. Stack units on top when you ride. Rearguard circle. The unit placed here is called the Rearguard. Place units here when you call. Guardian circle. Place units here when calling them to guard. The areas around your field include your deck, ride deck, drop zone where you put used cards, order zone, and damage zone where you put your damage. Place the grade 0 card from the ride deck you had prepared face down on the Vanguard circle. Place the remaining 3 cards face down in the ride deck area. Shuffle each other's main deck and place it in the deck area. Decide who goes first with a game of rock, paper, scissors. The winner will go first. Each player draws 5 cards from the deck. You may swap cards once at this point. The player going first returns the cards they want to change to the bottom of their deck and draws the same number. Shuffle the deck if you swap cards. The player going second then does the same. Now that we're done preparing, with Stand Up Vanguard, turn the card on the Vanguard circle face up to begin. In Vanguard, there are 6 phases each turn. Let's learn more about each of the phases. Stand phase. Stand phase happens at the beginning of your turn. Vertical cards are in stand. Horizontal cards are in rest. Stand all of the resting cards on your side of the field. There are no resting cards on your first turn. so you can proceed to draw phase straight away. Draw phase. Draw a card from the top of the deck during your draw phase. Ride phase. To ride is to stack cards on your Vanguard to increase its grade. You can only ride once per turn. You can ride a unit from your hand, or discard a card to ride a unit from the ride deck that you had prepared that is 1 grade greater than the Vanguard currently on your field. The cards placed underneath your Vanguard after riding are known as the soul and can be used to pay for costs of abilities. Main phase. During your main phase, you can call or move rear guards, use a card's ability, and use an order card. Calling or moving a rear guard. You can call a unit from your hand with a grade less than or equal to your Vanguard to any rear guard circle. Rear guards can move between the front and back of a column. Positions can be swapped within the same column too. Moving or swapping positions horizontally is not allowed. Battle phase. You can attack your opponent's front row units with your front row units during your battle phase. Rest the unit when it attacks. If the power of the attacking unit is greater than or equal to the power of the unit being attacked, the attack hits. If the attack hit a Vanguard, your opponent takes damage. If the attack hit a rear guard, put that rear guard into the drop zone. Let's attack your opponent's Vanguard with your Vanguard. When you attack with a Vanguard, you perform a drive check. To drive check is to put the top card of your deck into the trigger check zone face up. If a trigger unit was revealed, various effects are activated. Cards revealed for drive checks are added to your hand. Drive check, and get a critical trigger. It has the effect of +1 critical, and the effect of +10,000 power. You may choose to give each of these effects to a different unit. Let's give the critical to your Vanguard and the 10,000 power to your rear guard. As the attack was successful, your opponent takes 2 damage. When an attack hits, the other player performs a damage check. Put the top card of your deck into the trigger check zone face up, then put it into your damage zone. If a trigger unit was revealed, various effects are activated as well. Damage check. First check, no trigger. Put the card that was revealed into your damage zone. Second check, got a draw trigger. A draw trigger has the effect of draw a card and the effect of +10,000 power. Draw a card and add 10,000 power to your Vanguard. Next, let's attack your opponent's Vanguard with your rear guard. By resting a unit with the boost icon behind the attacking unit, the power of the unit behind gets added to the attacking unit. Attack the Vanguard with 26,000 power. Guard. When you're attacked, you can defend your units by guarding. To guard, choose any number of cards from your hand and call them to the Guardian Circle as rest. The power of the unit being attacked is increased by the shield of the units you called. If your Vanguard's power is greater than your opponent's attacking unit, the guard is successful. The power increased from guarding only lasts until the end of that battle. Once that attack ends, the power of the defended unit returns to its original value, and the units on the Guardian Circle are put into the drop zone. Let's aim to win by attacking and guarding repeatedly and dealing 6 damage to your opponent. End phase. This marks the end of your turn, and it is now your opponent's turn. This also concludes the description of each phase. Various abilities. Cards have various abilities in Vanguard. First, there's Persona Ride. It activates when you ride a unit with the Persona Ride icon from your hand on a card with the same card name. Draw a card when you Persona Ride. And for this turn, units in your front row get +10,000 power. Next, there's Intercept. When you are guarding, you can move rear guards in your front row with the Intercept icon to the Guardian Circle to guard. You can both intercept and guard with cards from your hand. It's a successful guard of 23,000 power. Put the units on the Guardian Circle into your drop zone when the attack ends. Twin Drive. Units with the Twin Drive ability can perform drive checks twice. When you attack with this Vanguard, perform 2 drive checks, as it has Twin Drive. First check. Second check. Got it! Over-trigger! An over-trigger is a powerful trigger, and your deck can only have one such trigger. Give 100 million power to any unit, and draw a card. If it's revealed during drive check, more effects can be triggered. Sometimes, costs must be paid to activate the card's abilities. First, there's Counterblast. Activate an ability by turning a specified number of cards in your damage zone face down. Next, Soul Blast. Activate an ability by putting a specified number of cards from your soul into the drop zone. Make full use of various abilities to be victorious in a card fight. This concludes the explanation of rules in Vanguard. Enjoy the world of Vanguard with a deck of your own.
Hello, and welcome back to Bushiroad Rumble Online. We just had round 1 happen, and I am Outer Orange, and here we have with us...
My name is Toku from It's Toku TV on Twitch, or I am the other half of Yellowcard Vanguard. And just like we had just said, we are just about to head into round 2 of the standard format for you guys. That is what we call Vanguard Overdress. Now, Overdress has changed a lot since the last time we've had BRO. One of them being we've got 3 new sets to play with, and we've also got a brand new anime season to enjoy as well. One of my favorite characters, Raika, and his very new Bunshin in youth work definitely feeds my edgelord addiction. But based on the 3 new sets that we've gotten our grade 4s, we've gotten some new Fest collection, we've gotten new forms for Zorga and Orphis there. What do you predict is going to really come out and really stand above the crowd this time around, Orange?
So personally, out of specifically the new stuff, not really looking at like some of the older stuff, but if we're talking about the new stuff specifically, I truly believe Phantom Blaster Overlord, or PBO as people call it just for short, or Peanut Butter, some jokingly say, I think that will be the most like known one, probably that with like maybe some Tamaria and Thegria. There is some a little bit of touch of Grave equals Zorga that we might see, but I think those are like probably the best decks to take out of the more recent specific sets out of those specifically. But overall, I see Gravidia doing really well and Kyrie doing really well. I would be surprised if those decks don't make it to Top Cut, to be honest, as they're really good decks to take right now. And then,
so one of the cool, interesting mechanics we got with set 4 was our new grade 4 forms of our 5 starter decks. My personal thoughts on the strongest ones are definitely Bastion, no bias there. But also Nirvana. Nirvana was able to also get a very nice bit of support in the new Festival Collection within Amelia, letting us actually kind of skip grade 3 and go straight into our grade 4 form of Nirvana, where we would be able to then, rather than wait on a counterblast to be able to give our front row that 10k buff, just kind of have it statically. One of the main things to note as well is that in Overdress, what we call one of the slower formats of the game, I think having that triple drive on that grade 4 is really what really sets these card strengths apart. What's your takes on this?
So I think grade 4s have a very aggressive grade 4 turn. And with that being said, yeah, there's definitely kind of that change of pace. Having that triple drive gives you one more chance to kind of hit triggers and put them on your rear guards and kind of extend a little bit further. You brought up Nirvana. Nirvana actually got a pretty decent buff as you can actually rewrite grade 4 into grade 4 and actually ping your opponent for 2 damage, which is an interesting little side factor you can do.
Fancy,
so
fancy.
Yep. There's a skill where you can counterblast, give your opponent damage. Now you can do that twice. Of course, if they're at 5, you can't do it, but prior to 5, you can do that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where that comes along. But grade 4s in general, I feel like just have become a turn 4 type of style. So a lot of decks have been actually, me being one of the people that's been doing it too, have been playing Persona decks to kind of start a turn earlier to try and kill before opponents can see their grade 4. So we'll kind of see a lot of that sort of attempts to do that. So I'm pretty excited about that.
You know what? I think this sounds like a very good kind of clash of methodologies. Now let's go ahead and see if this clash happens in our first game for you guys on stream. We have the first deck ready for your viewing. Let's bring it up. We've got a familiar name in Sabrier. Sabrier starting his Hollywood come to fame with his Vanguard career here, popping up on stream once again, playing not Grand Blue this time, but probably the closest thing to Grand Blue in Overdress, and that is Zorga, featuring the new Grave Zorga. Orange, you know a bit more about Grave Zorga than I do. Go ahead and rant off on this one.
Sure thing. Thank you. So pretty much Grave equals Zorgo lets you access Alchemagic differently. You can Soapbox discard a card to essentially get an order back and just start Alchemagicking off of that. That's the only way you can Alchemagic. It does not stay in the card anymore. They can just Alchemagic. You have to do that cost first. So it is something to kind of keep caution off as a Zorga player. Overall, the deck itself hasn't changed too much. Your Alchemagic every turn, bring out dragons, being as aggressive as possible. And we notice here there's a little bit of counter charging and some triple driving and some drawing going on, a little bit of mix of different types of orders. But overall, this is a very aggressive deck. And if you hit your pieces early enough with the dragons, you can kind of just go crazy starting from turn 2, and that's kind of what we're seeing here with Sabri's deck.
All right, very good analysis. Now let's go ahead and see what Sabrier is up against in this round 2 of the Bushiroad Rumble Online standard format. Bring me deck number 2, and then we have Kisa playing a little bit of Con here with Tamayura. One of my favorite decks aesthetic-wise, but I've also heard rumors that this deck is very incredibly strong. Orange, what makes this deck so strong?
So the way this deck works is essentially kind of has a similar little Bruce mechanic where pretty much after your grade 3 turn happens, your next grade 3 turn, she gets a continuous 5k front. And if you do that along with Persona, you pretty much have a 15k front. And with that being said, that makes the numbers magic numbers, but you're hitting for like 28s and 33s and like all these like really annoying numbers that make her just make every beat really aggressive on that point on. And that's kind of where the deck strengths is, on top of having the Shirayuki skill where you can pretty much also I say Shirayuki, but pretty much there's a skill that lets you negate power on your opponent's side, and that also has a lot of aggression behind it.
Wow, very good in-depth analysis. So yeah, I see like being able to combine her first skill along with the Persona ride, that's a lot of incidental power, which might just make that difference in between these two matchups. Let's go ahead and let the two players do the talking though, because they are raring to go, and so are we. Let's get into the first game for Bushiroad Rumble Online 2022 for the Overdress standard format. Let's Cardfight Vanguard.
I'm really excited for this one. So this is actually going to be a very interesting match. Both these decks are pretty beat down. I do believe that Zorga's case, if they can ramp up faster, they might be able to kill faster here, but we'll see here what's happening. And also, this is the top 7 searcher, so this is a ride line. Pretty much says top 7 search for 3 cards, by the way. You search for both the grade 2 targets, and I believe one of the, I think it's either the grade 3, I don't remember the third card, but you search 3 different cards here, which is pretty much impossible to miss off of the top 7.
Yeah, I mean, like, once your deck is, like, that many cards, you've got 4 copies of the Ririmi, 4 copies of the Rarami, probably playing some copies of the Order as well. It should be fairly easy to find something off the top 7 here, which makes this a very good ride, a guaranteed ride, basically.
Yep, yeah, exactly. There's no reason not to get this. Also helps with the unbricking because you do want to see those dolls as soon as possible. And here we have the other side, one of the best ride lines that Overdress has come out with, which is the Rancor Chain ride line, the Zorga ride line. You essentially Soul Blast, draw 2 and discard an order, getting you to push through your deck a little bit faster here.
Also, like, main thing is to, like, getting that order into the drop zone, just kind of playing towards what Zorga looks to do. So, not only are you digging through your deck, you are able to start accelerating your game plan there.
Yep, exactly. And funnily enough, that ride line gets used in so many other Stoicheia decks, and here we have it in the main deck where it was originally supposed to be in. And here we have the grade 2 skill. Pretty sure you just get a one of those cards and you bring it back to hand from drop zone. Another very interesting skill, very similar to actually Zorga's ride line here.
Yeah.
And here we have the swing happening.
Yeah, and it was a good thing to mention as well that, like, when Kisa discarded for the ride line, Kisa actually discarded that Rarami in preparation for the grade 2 ride, where they would be able to pick it up from the drop zone again.
Exactly. Now, here's something really interesting about the way Tamara works. Tamara works in a way where if you guard with those grade 2s, you essentially can put them into soul. So sometimes it's good to swing into them so that way they can't go into soul. And that is one way to shut down a lot of Tamara's power. And I'm wondering to see if, like, how that's going to happen. Because if you swing at Vanguard here, what you're essentially doing is you're letting your opponent be able to guard with the grade 2 and put into soul to enable your multi-attacking on Tamara's grade 3 turn.
And over on Sabrier's side of things here, Sabrier said, you know what, Kisa, I like your play so much, I'm going to do the exact same thing. As we ride into that Husker Dragon, once again picking up something from the drop zone, the card that we discarded off of the Rancor chain. And it looks like we're also going to go ahead and call down the Shadow Cloak, which is going to be able to let us dump an order from our deck into the drop zone. It looks like we have decided to dump my favorite order in Death Inviting Black Magic. Once the game goes on a bit longer, we all love to draw 2 cards, don't we?
I love that card. The art, the skill itself is very useful, though it takes time for it to ramp up, but it's just such a good card. And here we are going for, I believe, a rush turn here. We're going for the triple drive order. So the skill says, literally discard an order, and you just give your Vanguard an extra drive. So essentially, in this case, now we have a twin drive here, and we are calling out the, I believe that's the dragon here, giving it the 10k power, going for the full grade 2 turn push here. That calling with the dragon is going to be very high, because that booster in the back has additional 5k too.
So it looks like we're going to start with that poke here, the 10 into the Vanguard. Now, like you said, maybe it would be good to attack into the enemy there. Maybe that is what happened, and Kisa was able to use another copy from hand to guard it, and then be able to push it to Soul. But it also brings up the potential that if an attack goes towards the Vanguard, the enemy could intercept to then go into Soul as well.
That's a front.
Ooh, that's a good front trigger.
And you are very correct. It's something to note here that we don't see very often. We saw the application of the heal trigger being used here. Actually, I'm not too sure if they used the skill or not, but it was still just interesting to see that those are the new Festival Collection heals being used.
And it looks like with that, we're going to pass our turn over with really strong aggressive attack. But with that good defensive play from Kisa, being able to kind of like stave off that aggression and hopefully try and do a good tempo swing now that we are on a grade 3 turn, it allows us to use our main Vanguard skill, which has the effect on attack. You can counterblast 1, choose a card from Soul and call it to rear. And then if you choose, basically choose an enemy, you can also call Ridimi as well, basically refilling your front row. And basically with all of the ways that Rarami and Ririmi are able to get into Soul, just always be able to do this each turn and turn again.
Yep, that is exactly what's going to happen here, kind of pulling on the aggression. The interesting about Tomaria is that you can choose any card from Soul and call it. It doesn't necessarily have to be the specific cards. And something to note, I brought up the wrong heals. I saw the wall of text, thought it was the new heals. It was just actually the trial deck heals.
So on that context then, so since Tamayura is very modal in what it can call out, one of them being like Ririmi and Rarami to get that board reset, what kind of instances would you not go for either of those of the twins and call something else instead?
So there's that grade 3 dragon that you can call. Let me get the name here real quick. So you can get the excavation dragon, I believe it's called. It's a grade 3. Essentially put into Soul, gives something 5k power. So you can actually use that as a way to call that out if you want. You can call it interceptors. Some call grade 1s out because they still get some pretty good numbers going. So you kind of have like a lot of like little options. You definitely still prefer the dolls though.
Mm-hmm. Now, after Kisa's turn, it looks like we were able to get some good damage onto Sabri here as we pass it back, and it looks like we have rolled into the Grave equals Zorga. What a name. Grave equals Zorga. Not Grave Zorga, but Grave equals Zorga. As if to say Zorga is the drop zone.
Yep. He is the Grave here, and we're probably going to be seeing some alchemagic going on. So this deck is a little different from what people like to call Blue Zorga, which is the original Zorga, in which case it's way more aggressive and starts off like very strong, though we did lose access of GDR, which is Grief, Despair, and Rejection. That card gave 10k to the front, but instead of that, we got this kind of mechanic where if you alchemagic, you get 5k to the front, and then if you use the new grade 3 order, you get another 5k, and you can, here was that card coming out right now. And you can also call a grade 3 or less card from your drops onto the board. So essentially you're constantly reviving. I have a 10k front active pretty much at all times. And we're going for the retire here. There's actually, I've kind of forgot that this card exists, but this is actually also a nice free card to use. There's no cost on it. It's just straight retire something.
I do really like that card, yeah. Like we said, it's a good way of like getting resources. It's a good way to play around with your opponent's resources. And like as we said before, being able to push our Radamis into the drop zone rather than having it as like a sole resource, it adds up over time. They slowly start to lose potential attackers. They slowly start to lose potential interceptors, and with that, you can hopefully try and like leverage some advantage out for that.
And here we have that retire happening here. And I believe what you retire is what you call out as well, the grade that you would be able to call out with that. It's been a second since I've seen that card in particular.
And so basically between Clouded Miasma as well as Zorga's, Grave Zorga's skill, it looks like we basically, quote-unquote, Persona row this turn, because we would be able to still get that 10k buff to the front row, and combine that with, like, how easy it is to reanimate your front row, especially with that roaming prison dragon. We are able to get a lot of quote-unquote free advantage, just because every turn we're going to be able to play an order, every turn we're going to get our dragons out, every turn we're going to get that extra 5k buff.
Yep, exactly. And something to note here, Sabri started with pretty much a very small board, and he just got like a bunch of free board just off of just alchemagicking, essentially. Here we have our checks. So we're going into order into...
I believe... Looked like an overtrigger, but I guess that was just a heal.
yeah, I was just thinking to see if I could tell. But that looks to be a heal.
Oh, that's a good defensive trigger on Kisa's side of things, getting that extra 5k buff, but also a hand back. Now, Sabri's board is like incredibly large, so I'm not even sure if that 5k buff does too much, or if Kisa will hopefully be able to guard the rest of these. Getting able to use that 20k front shield trigger, really good as well.
Yep. Pretty much the numbers are still pretty high where you have to guard with triggers, as we're seeing here. But not high enough. I think once Persona happens, those numbers will be in like the 43s to 58s type of columns. And we are seeing here, I'm kind of wondering if there's going to be a... Nope, I think we'll just leave it on the board. So that grade 2 on the side is a counter charger if you Alchemagic or if you attack 5 times here. So you can choose to put into Soul, which they are doing here, just probably even for the Soul generation, because Zorga does go through Soul a lot more. So you sometimes want to see cards like that to kind of help you out. Here, let's see if we see that. Oh, we did not see a Persona ride, but we do have the 5k fronts. It's just those still be active here. Calling out the dragon that I brought up earlier, which gives an additional 5k once you put into Soul. Very useful card in a deck like this, as it makes numbers better. And you can keep bringing it out. You can keep recursioning it if you want. You can put it to Soul and then use Tamari's skill to bring it back out.
I assume on Kisa's side of things, though, but this I assume this will be like just your typical 5 attack turn. Maybe even choosing to not use the Orlando we see in the back there until after the Rara and Riris come out. That way to be able to get a better boost. But maybe Kisa will then value higher that 5k extra boost onto the Vanguard. It really does depend on what Kisa thinks of Sabrier's hand. Like, I do want to mention that because Sabrier's deck, the Grave Zorga deck, plays a lot of orders, those are a lot of cards that you can't really use to guard, and it is one of the weaknesses of the deck, I will want to say. But if you are able to just amass a lot of advantage otherwise from saving cards in hand to be able to call them from the drop zone, it might be able to get you those extra cards you need to be able to guard your opponent's turn.
Exactly. We on top of that, we also just got a double trigger turn right there, so that those numbers got a lot higher. And it looks like can't tell exactly what that is over there, but it looks like a trigger. It looks like a crit trigger fell in, so a little helps a little bit with the power here. But yeah, you're very right. So I think what Kisa's doing is they are tempoing out sort of the turn, because Tamaria has a couple like skills. It has also the 10. You can like lower the 10k on your opponent's side if you wish to. So I think they're kind of holding off until their Persona turn to kind of go aggressive. But I think they're also doing the same thing for Sabri, waiting on for their Persona to then minus the 10k again and make the numbers guardable.
And actually, yeah, it looks like, just like what you said, Kisa's trying to, like, almost slow the game down. Chose not to use the counterblast to call something else out.
I think they did. I think they called out the dragon. They used the dragon, put the dragon to Soul, and they called it back out. That recursion.
I see. Okay.
Because the dragon gives 5.
Dragon blinked.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah, you're good. It disappeared and reappeared again, and then also it gave 5k each time, so it gave 10k total to wherever Kisa chose to put it, which I think he put on Vanguard, and then you put on the rear.
Okay, so just messing around with the powers a bit in respect of the defensive trigger that Sabria got, and if I'm not mistaken, did we get a Persona ride this turn on Sabria's side of things?
I believe we did see. I did see. I think I saw another Great Eagle Zorka go on top there. And now we're going back into our Alchemagicking skills, going for the double draw here, which is very interesting. So that card, though it's good, it is a little costly early on. So you have to be kind of careful how you use it. You do have the Rogue Headhunter to kind of help you with the counterblast, but it still can be pretty high if you're using it earlier than later. So I think here we're going for the double draw, and we're going in for another of the new Grade 3 that lets you get the 5k front on top of being able to revive something. But I think they're thinking a little bit how they want to do this, because it's pretty heavy on the counterblast. So see here, we had to drop 3 CB for that, which is very costly as a Zorga player. Your resources matter a lot here, so you want to be very careful when you're playing that. That's my only downside to this card. You have to be very careful how you play it. And you don't want to use it too late either, because then you'll deck out.
Yeah. It's kind of like a very fine balancing point, because not only do you need to like time it at a point where, like you said, you don't want to deck out, but you also, every turn, you need to be playing an order. Yep. The deck lives and dies, haha, Grave Zorga, by playing orders. So if you're not able to play an order this turn, your turn is just nothing.
Exactly. So if sometimes you get forced into these situations where you're forced to play orders you don't want to play, and maybe in this situation I'm not actually too sure what the drop zone is looking like, but maybe Sabra was forced to play into this one, because at these situations you kind of want to start going for aggro, and you want to prioritize aggro orders over like orders that draw, unless you need the draw, of course, in which case it's very possible, because tomorrow's only going to get stronger and stronger, especially with a persona coming. And here I believe we might be using the order here. Looks like he says thinking about that soul, so it'd be a good place for it. They're thinking on it because it is a Soul Blast 2 to pretty much minus 10k, but nope, they're just gonna let it go. That's a front into a Rogue Headhunter. All right. So nice, more 10k power. So now would be a good time to potentially maybe want to minus that 10k here, because the numbers just got even higher. If I get my math right, the dragons are 5k. They get 10k on their own 15. Persona makes them 25. The special skills adds another 5k each. That's 35. And then the booster gets at 13. So those are 48 for 2 damage on each side, which is what we saw here.
Taking that crit from the dragon, going straight to 5 here. And then one last attack, which Kisa does have the PG for, and this is what I like to call the fun part about Overdress is, as both players hit that 5 damage mark, those PGs finally start dropping out of hand. Yep. And sometimes even when your opponent is sitting only at 3 hand, you might not have seen any PGs yet. And those PGs, they have that special effect that if your hand has 2 or more cards, you discard. So when that PG is like your second last card in hand, when it's your last card in hand, you are able to PG for free, and then with that, you might be able to like survive a turn, top deck into victory.
Yep, exactly. Something I want to note here. So Kisa chose to take 3 damage here, kind of forcing out a you will not be able to heal here situation, because these numbers are going to get really high. And I think actually going to 5 was really smart. So Sabri kind of had his like aggressive turn, like maybe I can try to kill you here turn, but it might not happen again. So Kisa took that to their advantage and chose not to utilize on guarding too much, to kind of be able to guard a potentially now that there's double dragons, it'd be easier to guard the upcoming turns that Sabri will have. So here we are going for full combo. They did Persona Ride. There's a 15k front active on every attack here, and this will be the 5 attack combo going on here. Bunch of soul to work with. We're going all in here, potentially try and kill if we can.
Right, we're starting with the Barry Octavio here. That's going to be 28. 28, one of my favorite numbers in the Overdress format right now. Triggers being 15k at base, so in order to guard that 28k, you will need those new front triggers, which we do see. Kisa actually putting that 5k buff onto the back row is something I really like. This is a good way to ensure that your attacks get bigger and bigger each turn, but actually going for this kind of attack pattern, which maybe Kisa just doesn't have it. And you know what? That's an overtrigger.
An overtrigger, which just changed everything. So now the Vanguard will be restanding again, so that will be another 28 attacker coming. And you are correct, it was really smart to utilize the power that way, as it made more magic numbers. But it looks like we have another attack coming.
I think the cute part about this now is that once again he will be able to attack with the dragon, push it back into soul, and since Tamayura is not once per turn on his attack skill, Dragvita, the overtrigger for Dragon Empire, restanding the Vanguard will allow us to actually swing again with the Tamayura, use his effect once again, and maybe even now this time is when we call the twins out. Let's see what Kisa does.
You can actually, wow, I never even thought about Tamario like that, but yeah, you can utilize even more attacks now.
I wonder if the reason why we actually haven't seen Kisa do the 5 attack pattern is because he might be missing Ryurimi in Soul. I'm thinking a lot to like the twins that I've seen, and most of it has been Rarami, no Ryurimi yet. So maybe that's why we keep calling this dragon out.
Yup, you know, you might be onto something there. I get them a little confused because they look pretty similar. So yeah, you're correct. It's possible that there hasn't been a chance to do that. So here we have again counterblasting again, bringing back out probably the dragon again. This dragon is really showcasing its power this match.
It is putting in a lot of work. Like, not to mention that making full value of A, Tamayura's 5k buff, but B, the Persona ride as well. So that extra 15k to the front has been applied. An extra time on the Vanguard, an extra time to the column where the dragon is kind of dancing.
Yep.
And it looks like that was PG.
That was a 2 to pass, yes. Because there was a trigger hit on that 5th damage here, so pretty blockable stuff. I kind of wonder if the dolls were able to come out this turn, if we actually would have seen a completely different turn here. Having double dolls come out would have been actually insane, but Sabre did survive that over-trigger 15k plus power onslaught that we just witnessed here. So here we go again, going in. I believe that's another Persona that we just saw.
I think it was the Soul Blast.
It was a Soul Blast, you're right. So no Persona this turn, but that's perfectly fine. The numbers will still be pretty large here. And now we're going for the Tearful Malice, which lets you retire 2 to draw counter charge and put the Tearful Malice into Soul, which enables pretty much a Soul Charge, a counter charge, and a draw, all in one card. So very nice card. Going with the, we're going for the Triple Drive this time. Also a really good play, pretty much just carding orders to draw into better cards. Yeah. So we'll see kind of how this plays out here.
Zorga was kind of jealous of the main ride lines being able to get a triple drive in set 4. So he's like, you know what? I'm going to triple drive as well.
Yep.
I don't care what you guys say. I have the ability to.
Exactly. It's like, why not? And something to keep in mind, something interesting about the Tearful Malice. So the reason why people run Tearful Malice is literally to retire the dragons, then recall them back out and reapplying the 10k and the crit here. So it's just what we'll be seeing here. It's one of the very favored move amongst Zorka players. It's very satisfying. You retire the 2 cards that you don't want, that you want on the board, to then bring them back on the board off of their own skills. And it always happens after the full Alchemy Magic happens here. So that's what we saw happen here. So we have the extra 10k and the crit back in action. Kisa is at 5, so everything has to be guarded from this point on. We have the 10k passive going on between Zorka and using Alchemy Magic here. So, actually, is it 10k?
5k from the Alchemy Magic on Zorga's skill.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if we saw the power buff order being used. I think it was...
Yeah, he fixed it. Yeah, he fixed it. It's 5.
All right, there we
go. I was thinking, because it's the grade 3 order that gives the extra 5k. Otherwise, Zorga just gives a 5k passive.
Going for the Zorga swing first, hoping for a front trigger, maybe even a over trigger crackback, but we get
that
one
would be
PG
perfect out. Here. That would be. We have 3 shots here to get some hands, maybe anything to fix. Oh my gosh, that is an over trigger back. It is Toku, the mind reader, the decorator has confirmed the OT. This is a heal, a double draw, a 10k front, a crit, and 100 million being put on stuff. This is a PG double columns side happening here. This is gonna be very aggressive.
Like I said, this is Sabrier's leap to fame, popping onto the BRO streams many times, and even on this time showing off the anime protagonist skills. You over-trigger me? No, I over-trigger you.
Woo! And this really showcases these dragons just got very lethal. We don't need a Persona, you just need to hit over-trigger, then you'll have a Persona regardless.
Yeah, honestly, the fact that the over-trigger has like that front trigger modal as well, built-in Persona ride. Now it's all asking, how many PGs does Kisa have? Kisa did manage to get 2 Vanguard swings, which is effectively a +2. So we're hoping that at least there's going to be 1 PG and hard guard the non-over-trigger buffed one.
Yeah, that's pretty much what you want to do here. Perfect guard the 100 mil and 3 card guard the dragon, because the dragon without Persona should be at 48 or 53, something like that. So it's still a pretty guardable number. If this had been under Persona, it would have been even higher. But honestly, like it should be we're pretty much pretending that the same turn happened last time. I think it should be 48 here. So here we have the perfect guard coming in for the OT column, and there should be just enough to guard the other side. We'll see kind of how it happens here.
Hopefully between the order, hopefully between the at least one of the intercepts I see there, we should be able to sneak past his turn. But to make mention of what Sabrier drove check, we saw I saw a Grave Zorga, so Persona right for next turn. I saw a PG, and I saw what we saw the Overtrigger.
Yeah, so there's two mystery draws.
Two mystery draws there, but the PG being there is very, very, very reassuring on Sarbe's side of things.
Yep, and here we saw this finally the order coming down, the Soul Blast 2. If your Vanguard's tomorrow, you pretty much give your Vanguard the skill of your opponent's front rear guards -10. So essentially losing that overdress power here and just going straight in for just a easier number to guard. Oh, sorry, overtrigger power. So that pretty much what happened there was -10k made the dragon a lot more guardable, and now it is back to Kisa after double OT essentially in one game here. We'll see where is this gonna go. We're getting kind of close to deck out numbers here.
Calling down Forktail, and I didn't even see what was put into Soul. I blinked for
It was the doll. It might have been the other doll that Kisa hasn't had this whole time, so maybe we'll finally see a 5 attack to Mario here.
I'm hoping to finally see it. We know that Sabrier's hand is at its lowest now, just having to guard that very large turn with that double overtrigger. Still managing to get 5 attacks, 6 attacks, though a different way. Now going with another 5 attacks, this time with the Tamayura double dragons to give those back rows an extra 5k, just making those numbers just that much scarier.
Yep. This is gonna be the numbers are pretty annoying here. They're like 18, even without 18, the persona. It's still a trigger to guard or the draw trigger.
Yeah, 18 is also one of my favorite numbers, especially with the shield values in overdress on normal units being weaker. We don't have any 10k shields. So something that normally would take 10k at 1-card guard in the other formats now requires you to waste a trigger, 5k worth of power on the trigger, or hopefully have that draw trigger that gives us an extra power. But Kisa did get a defensive, which is very nice to see. This does make Kisa's power attributing a bit more different, as he would have to take into account that extra 10k. Maybe that 5k from the dragon had to go to this dragon, which will then push it onto the Vanguard. Oh, and it looks like
game.
I was
wondering if I was gonna say that. I think Sabri still had some heals left. So, but yeah, that there was no way to guard all that. There was a little much there. So that does end the game there. Very well played from both players.
What a way to start off the Bushiroad Rumble Online tournament with an offensive overtrigger and then a crackback, an offensive overtrigger. This is how you do it. This is the tension max of Cardfight Vanguard sometimes.
Yeah, that was wild. Going from an OT turn into an OT turn, both very strong overtriggers, and I feel like Kisa and Sabri, they both played out really well. But honestly, I think Kisa guarded. That's why I mentioned that early guard, that early moments where they weren't guarding but taking those really big attacks, really came in favor, because at the time where the guard came most valuable was under that overtrigger. Had they guarded like early on and lost all that guard, I think that OT turn would have been their death. So that was like insane to watch.
Yeah, like actually think it's really interesting that, especially on the crackback right after Kisa took the crit from that one dragon attack, that gave us enough counterblast to actually use that Tamayura more than once.
Yep, exactly.
So
it also lowered the healing power.
It also lowered the healing power on Sarbi's side of things. So kind of movie magic, what we just saw here. Almost like an episode out of the anime. But good jobs to both Sabri and Kisa, showing off their deck strengths very well. And we are just about to head into the next round of Bushiroad Rumble Online, but we're going to send you to a short break as we get ready for that.
Toku, what is that?
Oh, this is actually a card from this card game called Cardfight Vanguard. It actually turns out a while ago, even before Overdress, we had a collab with this thing called Token Ranbu, and Token Ranbu actually exists in Overdress now. A very interesting set. A lot of people don't play it because it's not exactly what we call the strongest, but it does have a lot of unique things unique to it that might catch people off surprise and hopefully maybe get them some wins.
Okay. I honestly, I'm gonna be real with you. I don't know anything about Token Ranbu, at least for Overdress. I know basic mechanics, but that's one of the decks that I've seen very little ever since it's come out. So it'd be interesting to see kind of what the play style is of that deck if it were to show up. So
for sure. And speaking of, I wanted to kind of like bring us back into the first game. The first game we were kind of like talking about like the new heal triggers, right? The new heal triggers having like very specific effects as to like when they'd be able to like guard heavily with. What are your takes on these new heal triggers? Like I personally don't like them because I feel like they're too specific in the timings at when they're good, and sometimes they're not good against like certain matchups. But some people have like sworn by them, and I'm like curious to get to know as to like from your point of view what your thoughts on these new heal triggers are.
I have a 50-50 with them right now. I think they're somewhat good, somewhat bad. They're very matchup reliant and I think and very meta reliant. So because of that, I think it'll just really depend on the kind of like what the situation for the meta that will call for them. But we can actually discuss this probably maybe in a couple of rounds, or maybe we'll see them in action because we do have our decks ready. So let's go ahead and see deck 1 for the rounds. Round 3.
You know what? Sometimes you can just will things into materialization, and we have Aya playing Token Ranbu in the overdress format. So Aya, based on what I'm seeing here, their favorite sword from Token Ranbu is probably Yaman Bagiri Kunihiro.
Yep.
So this is a ride line where basically in this deck you choose your favorite sword, and the entire ride line is that sword. Very simple draw engine within it, and has some soft multi-attack. But one of the things that does set it back, or one of the things that was more unique to it, is its overtrigger. Its overtrigger is actually, if I recall correctly, an order. Now, probably one of the coolest things is to have that trigger on an order. It has a very cool effect as well. So even if you weren't able to offensively trigger your overtrigger, if you were to draw it, you would still be able to get a very strong effect off of it if you didn't use it to guard.
It's actually really interesting. You don't see that with the other overtriggers, so I am kind of excited to see where this takes. But let's see kind of what Token Ranbu will be facing. See what player 2 is. Oh,
another familiar face in Living Proof. Living Proof, you would have thought would be playing Bruce, but actually representing Barrow Magnus this time around. And Barrow Magnus, one of the stronger decks in the format, I do want to say so myself, opting to play no copies of Barrow Magnus in the main deck and just playing off the one that we're going to be able to ride from the ride deck, and just using a mass amount of soul charge to hit that 15 soul threshold and get all of our effects off as soon as possible.
yeah, you are correct. I actually didn't notice the fact that there was no persona, but sometimes you don't need it. You just get the 10k off of his own skill and just kind of work with that along with the grade 2 that gives the fronts. So maybe the persona is just not the way to go. So we'll kind of see what this deck provides us here, what Living Proof has us to show as we go into round 3 Bushiroad Rumble Online. Let's go ahead and see this match. I'm excited.
I'm very excited. I want to see what he is able to present with Token Ranbu, just because a lot of people won't know what Token Ranbu does, and it might be able to catch Living Proof off guard. Big shoutouts to Aya on the right here. My favorite sword is Hotarumaru, as you saw from my SP. Aya representing the mat and the sleeves. Big shoutouts there.
I wish I could relate to the same way. I only have just a little mat from G era in my room, and that's about it. That's about all I know. I just know the main character, which is, I believe their name is Mikazuki. That's the only character I know from Token Ranbu. So
Alright, it looks like Stand-Up Vanguard and Proof will take the lead. Very important as well, because Barrow Magnus probably has one of the strongest on grade 3 rides in the game right now. Especially being able to immediately hit that panda tax one turn ahead of your opponent being on grade 3. Then the next turn after, you have the counterblast for it, a second panda attack. And especially in a deck like Token Ranbu, which actually plays a lot on the board state, Barrow Magnus' skill to just have both players suck up their board into the soul can put a large damper on things.
now, something I do want to note, since Barrow Magnus puts stuff into Soul, and the Yaman Bagiri, sorry if I'm saying it correctly, has a skill that lets you Soul Blast those. Would it be kind of useful to put some of those into Soul to then be able to, like, the Barrow Magnus will put it into Soul for you, so then you can use the skill more often?
You know what? That'd be kind of interesting. I wonder if that will be one of the consequences that come off of Barrow Magnus forcing all the cards into Soul. Can only wait and see. But maybe that would be the case in a deck that does Soul Blast a lot, like Token Rambu. Maybe Aya is happy to get that surplus amount of soul.
So we have the Electro Spartan going in. We get an extra little draw.
That's a good draw trigger.
Yep. Not seeing too much soul charging yet, or any units to being called out to kind of help with the soul, like Selfish Engraver. So we'll kind of see here if the 15 soul condition will be met, because that's the biggest thing about Bear Magnus. You want to hit that 15 soul as soon as possible to start applying pressure.
Maybe Proof just doesn't have like a good grade 2 to call down that also helps in the soul, because the main thing about Selfish Engraver is the fact that I believe that she disappears.
Yep.
And because of that, you not only do you get your soul charge, but you're also able to remove attack targets for your opponent to deny Counterblast denial, which then allows more Counterblast to be used for 1 on the Barrel Magnus skill and 2 on the Pandemonium Tactics.
Yeah, exactly. She does take a little bit. She goes away when you have 10 or more souls. So early on, you can just use her as an attacker. And then later on, you can use her as like a soul fuel, essentially. But the early soul charge, the on-hit pressure is actually very important. So we'll kind of see what happens here. We're using Bear Magnus' skill here to, or not Bear Magnus, sorry, Electro Spartan's skill here to put a card from your hand to soul to draw a card and then soul charge once for when Bear Magnus rides upon it. So that's kind of what's happening here. And we'll see how much soul we get. And we saw Queenly go into soul as well, which is a very good setup card for not decking out, essentially. We're also getting a bunch of power. Here we have Swirler, one of the craziest and really well brought on cards that came out that really helps with Bear Magnus, that helps with Bruce. It's just a heavy beater here. It helps you soul charge, and every time you soul charge, he gets an additional 5k power. So we'll kind of see how that will be utilized throughout this match.
And kind of just fanning out the soul right in front to be able to keep track of everything there. Here comes another very strong costless soul charge 2 coming from Curtis.
Double Curtis.
Doing it twice. And we're just going to have to like count up the stacks of Brainwash Swirler there.
And here is Pendulum Tactics also coming out. Another just straight up 4 soul for 1 counterblast. So a card that's meant for Bruce, but is being used in Bear Magnus. We might be 1 soul short here, or we might be just on it. But we do have the pony in there, so I actually think the pony will help us get to that 15 soul condition.
Yeah, the pony being what we like to call a Dimensional Creeper clone. Once again, just being a card in soul that counts as an extra card in soul, being able to pop it out of soul, just to hit those like emergency soul thresholds. But going straight into attacks here.
That Swirler is so large. Luckily enough, not being at too high damage, it's not scary. But my goodness, that can get really scary really fast.
All right, taking the first damage, or is that second damage, and then swinging with the Barrel Magnus here. Gonna be able to draw a card.
Yeah, going through all the motions here. At 5, you draw. At 10 soul, you get 10k to crit. At 15, you put everything to soul, call out 2 cards, so you each get 10k. You can choose to call. You can choose to call 2. You don't have to call, but this is a good way to utilize your soul as a toolbox engine here, which is what we're seeing here. Getting the Selfish Engraver out, potentially maybe getting another useful card out if there is anything. Yeah, usually this is where you can differentiate between a good Bear Magnus player and someone that's maybe still be learning, because this is where it's important to know what to call out.
Soul charging the crit there, but Barrel Magnus already on grade 3 turn and still getting that 10k in a crit. Already basically getting its own crit trigger, but having another Selfish Engraver here to call instead of that Swirler would have been like insanely good. Just be able to doubly refund everything that was happening. We do see another Panda attack go into the hand there, but at 15 soul already, probably just going to be used for that PG that we also saw drove checked.
Yep, exactly. Here we have a little bit of the Selfish Engraver going on. Taking this one, opting not to take the Selfish Engraver. Actually does have a little on hit there, so avoiding the on hit, not adding any more soul. Sometimes the on hit's good. It is mandatory. You can actually try and deck out Bear Magnus players if they're not careful.
I think that's definitely one of the hidden win cons against Barrel Magnus is you are able to like grind through all the turns that they are just wiping your board, getting extra attacks out. Eventually, because of how quickly they soul charge, usually a turn ahead of time, they will be on that low count.
Interesting. So here we have, this is the grade 3. This is so if you Persona Ride, you get an extra crit. And this is what I was talking about. So it says you may Soul Blast the cost of like, so you thought about Soul Blast instead with a Kiwani. For the cost instead of Counter Blasting, you can Soul Blast with that instead. So it's also saying like maybe you can get those into Soul somehow and kind of utilize that skill. But essentially you draw a card and you call a card, you choose up to one card from here, call it to an open rearguard circle, essentially applying that multi-attack they were talking about earlier, Toku.
Yeah. So actually, what happened here was what Aya used was the grade 2 skill, Yamanbagiri Kunihiro Toku. When rolled upon by Kiwame, which is the grade 3 we see on screen right now, we can filter for another copy of Kiwame for Persona Ride next turn. So on the first turn that we are on Kiwame, it's basically just on attack, counterblast 1, draw 1, and call 1 to an open rearguard circle to gain an extra attack. The next turn after... choose up to. So you could just counterblast 1, draw 1 on the swing as well. But on that second turn, once you get the Persona Ride off, you get that crit, and then you also, instead of counterblasting, can use that Soul Blast cost since you have that Kiwame in Soul now.
Yep, I was just about to say, so it kind of utilizes that extra soul so you can do everything you want to do. So essentially, it's just kind of like almost a turn 4 deck as well. A lot of your conditions go live once you pretty much Persona Ride.
But it looks like basically taking it very slow on that first turn, like we said, very turn 4 centric, needs that Persona Ride, needs that extra copy in Soul, and needs that extra crit on the Vanguard swing. Take it slow, push Living Proof to 3 damage, and at that point, when Aya goes for their kill turn on the next turn, that extra crit just applies that bit more pressure. Most importantly, though, I do like that they decided not to call anything to the board.
Yep.
That way, all the attacks that they would have done would have given Proof more counterblast, but at the same time, Proof's skill on Barrel Magnet Swing to then suck up the entire board would then leave Aya at like a very strong deficit.
I agree here. I think Aya pretty much went for a slower play here, choosing to just get a little bit of that farm going, maybe slowing down the pace to go for another win con or something, because like eventually you're gonna have to start calling stuff out, right? So you want to be very careful and kind of tempo this out. And we haven't seen that new grade 2 yet, that one that was just Counter Blast flip back for the counter charge. That grade 2 really helps you with, grabbing stuff from Soul, but not having access to that actually makes it easier for Aya to kind of tempo this out.
Yeah. And at this point, now that like Proof is already at that 15 Soul, now just going through the motions each turn on attack, choose what cards to call out of Soul. Eventually there will become a tipping point where it becomes time for Proof to like start calling out the real attackers of the deck to try and finish off the game there. But right now I think Aya's strategy is to just kind of turtle up and try and find a really good opportunity just for that crackback. Because right now the onus is on Proof to try and go for lethal right now. Swirlish Engraver going to get another Soul to become itself a 13k attacker.
And then now we're using the Cutting Sword Dance skill here to counterblast, discard a card, choose a card from Soul, bring to hand. You can bring OT back to hand, which is exactly what's going on here. A nice little 50k guard, which will help in the situation, and use Soul Charge. So being very close to deck out here, gotta start thinking about that Quinley girl here to kind of help with that. To give yourself extra turns here, so because the longer this game goes, the more lethal Bear Magnus gets, but also the more scarier it is for deck outs.
But like we said, because we already got that Keenly Ludian Soul, Barrel Magnus being able to on attack for a counterblast, immediately reset the board. But then once we're able to call that Keenly out using Barrel skill, we are once again able to reset our deck before we do our drive checks to make sure we don't deck out.
Yep.
I think what Aya needs to play on is the fact that that kind of play requires 2 counterblast, one for Barrel Magnus and one for Keenly. If Aya is able to somewhat choke Proof at this point here, we might be able to grind it out to a deck out.
I agree, and we did see that double swirler off of those drive checks, which is, if I'm not mistaken, swirler is mandatory for the first Soul Charge. Yes, it is. It's one place you have to Soul Charge. So if you are correct, choking here might actually be a good idea. So as you mentioned, the Vanguard will give you getting a crit now. So you can honestly you can do the choke here. Just swing with Vanguard. It has crit on it. Swing it, and you can kind of just slow it down. Just force out the deck out here if you really wanted to.
Now, from my knowledge of this deck, the ideal line of play is to actually use a grade 2 called Yamanbagiri Chogi, which goes well with this deck because it has the effect that after it attacks the Vanguard, if the column is empty, you can push it to the back row, which then opens up another column that Kiwame is able to call to. And it looks like we do have that very shiny copy of Chogi on the right there, as well as my personal favorite, Hotarumaru, on the left there, which has a very cool skill, which unfortunately doesn't come up too much in this matchup. When Hotarumaru is retired from the rearguard circle during the opponent's turn, you can counterblast one and grab it from the drop back into the hand. So you are able to just keep getting a constant source of attack there. Also has the ability that when placed on the rearguard circle, as we do see, it gains 5k, and if our opponent's on grade 3 or greater, it gains 10k. So basically, Hotarumaru within this deck is kind of its own resource engine, albeit you do need to counterblast each time.
This is very unique. I actually haven't seen this end play at all. This is a very unique attack patterns here. So we have the swing coming in. We're going to be moving this to the back row, then recalling out essentially a board while also recursioning that grade 1 in the back with getting it back to hand. That is a very, very different play style. We haven't seen anything like this, I think, at all. Like, we've seen Aquaforce kind of do something similar, but not necessarily like in this way. I wonder if Aya is attacking rear guards here. That is like my biggest curiosity going on right now, because like this is a very scary situation for Proof to be in right now. Getting close to deck outs, as you mentioned, the choking point here would be actually pretty serious. And that hand, though it has an OT in it, has also 2 spoilers, which are just 5k blocks. So that's not that much, especially on a Persona turn like this.
And I think one of the main things to note for Proof side of things as well is that each damage that Proof decides to take on this turn is another soul charge that Proof would not be able to do.
Exactly.
Now, of course, like we did say, the 2 counterblast play of being able to call the keenly on the barrel is an option. But it looks like the drop zone right now is literally just pandemonium tactics, so it wouldn't be able to send anything back, so that keenly wouldn't get very large. But
you're right.
Having a deck that isn't 0 means that you're not losing because of deck out.
Exactly. I think at this point you kind of want to be able to have another turn, and if you can't, can we send some soul not drop?
Soul not drop. Okay.
So the soul it'll be the kind of the last turn here. So pretty much what will happen is after this happens, if Living Proof survives, and they'll have one more turn essentially to kind of come back.
All right. So Aya is going to be you. Oh.
Okay. Hey, I know that guy.
So yeah, so Mika is actually one of the strongest grade 2 attackers in the set. It has a very interesting on-attack effect as a rearguard. So based on the damage cards in your damage though that you have, so it scales higher and higher based on your damage. Very similar to how it plays in the game. But 2 or more cards gains 5k. Very simple. 3 or more gains 5k. That is like the Shinken Hisatsu of Token Ranbu. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just saying, I'm seeing the crit here, which is very important. So you can keep going. You're explaining the skill.
Yeah, but that crit, if I do see correctly, and if Aya is at 5, that crit going onto the Munechika is really strong. But it does look like it is going to the Hotarumaru instead. Maybe Aya is only at 4 damage, and that's why we don't get the Munechika's effect to Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1 to restand it. Otherwise, that crit on the Munechika would be 2 crit swings at the Vanguard. Does have a very strong skill here that we're going to see, is that as we go into the end of our turn, we are able to use... Oh, and we do have the Counterblast. We do have 5 damage, so we are able to get the stand there. Very good to see. I guess it kind of does bring in the question. Maybe should have put the crit on the Munechika there, but either way, still a really good way to do things.
I agree. I'm not too sure if the other column will have any form of recycling for like a multi-attack going on, but I agree in this situation the restand for the double crit would have been perfect here, because I don't think Proof has enough to guard 2 crit rear guard twice. Like I said, we have an OT, we have the swirlers, but that's not enough to guard all of this, especially if it's 2 crit.
And it looks like at least one of the PGs that we know of from Proof side of things was used on the Vanguard swing there.
Yes, and here we have another trigger coming down. This is a very interesting play. So this is one of those situations where you want to kind of go for lethal, but Aya knows that there is an OT in hand. So even swing with that column, though it is a crit, it's just it's not gonna... Oh, does this trigger twice? Oh, no, it's once per turn. I see it here. Never mind. I was about to say, can you do this again? But you can't.
I would love for us to be able to do again. But I think the main thing, like what I really like about Aya's attack pattern, is rather than using Munechka on a first swing, use it later to kind of like check your defensive trigger.
Yes.
We do know that we haven't seen the over trigger on Aya's side of things, so any card on the top that you see that isn't an over trigger, you push it down to the bottom, that's one more card closer. Over trigger has 6 damage, is a pretty good 6 damage to take when you're in this kind of situation.
Yeah, this is I think trying to just give Proof no hand might be the play here, but honestly, like Proof is gonna have another turn of pretty much cycling through that soul here. I don't think this account will happen because of the Quinley being active here, so coming up. So we'll see. This is a very scary turn here. Oh, he's going for the rear guard.
Oh, going for the rear
Smart.
guard. And then using the big crit swing to go for the Vanguard here.
Yep.
We do have the OT, which we will use, and that should go ahead and pass the priority back to Proof after resolving Aizen Kunitoshi there.
Yes, and if I'm not mistaken, Proof just has the swirlers left, and technically could soul charge still, gain the power off of them, and then just send all the normal units back to deck. So we'll see here kind of sort of what happens. Oh, that goes back to hand too. That's really interesting. I'm not gonna lie, watching Token Rambo in action has been really cool. Like, there's just so many cool little gimmicks, kind of cool interactions that's been happening, like moving stuff back, bouncing the stuff to hand, searching out copies. Very cool.
Ooh, and we see Proof on a very low deck count there, but we do have that 2 counterblast to play on. Let's go ahead and see what Proof decides to do. Gonna use one of the swirlers, soul charge 1, gain that 5k. And I guess with that Queenly and that extra counterblast in a stock, we are able to kind of feel comfortable going into this turn right now. Actually opting to only go for straight into battle phase, not calling another copy, since definitely don't want to take any risk of deck out there.
Exactly, I agree with that. So if you Quinly Lu here, you'll send it all back anyway, so...
Yeah.
Honestly, another attack wouldn't be a bad option, is the best way to put it.
It wouldn't be a worse. Like, maybe you could have called down that other... Because, yeah, we still have
or maybe he's
some
going to call it
cards
here. Oh, okay. I was going to say, could have called the swirler here, too. But here we go, using the skill here. Probably double skill.
Alright, it's going to be a very big Keenly here, based on...
Yes.
How many normal
PG or
units are
die.
so. And yeah, on Aya's side, we are on that 6 damage. If there was a turn to attack to use a PG on, it would probably be on... Actually, it would be on the Vanguard swing, and then if you had to take an attack, you would probably want to take the Keenly's attack, based on how big it is. And then, hopefully, defensive trigger, 1 card from hand for that last Selfish Engraver swing, and kind of take it away from there. After Keenly comes out here, Barrel Magnus swings, like, the drive checks aren't as scary as the deck is now, like, in a very uncompressed state.
Yes.
But Barrel Magnus itself is still able to put on a lot of pressure. Just every turn, 10k crit, 10k crit, 10k crit, it does add up over time.
Yeah, we've already seen a lot of PGs getting burnt through as it is. So like, you only have 4 PGs. You know, there's only so many you can use. So we'll see kind of here what's going to happen. But that is going to be a very big Quinly Lu here. And I definitely agree with your take. Guarding the Vanguard, taking the rear guard would be the place here. Hoping to hit a heal, preferably an OT, and surviving that way.
Alright, let's go ahead and see the decision made by Aya at this critical point in the game there. I'm trying to think if there was any way that Aya could... I actually think Aya played it very well. Like, not to discredit the deck that Token Rambu is, but this is uphill. And Aya definitely played it to their outs. Ooh, 1-2 pass, especially going after the Keenly Rudely when the deck is incredibly compressed. Actually very smart as well. Never, for some reason, never thought of that, but I really like that as well. 3 cards in hand on Aya's side. Okay, this is also good.
Yeah, might. So this is smart.
I like Proof going big first.
Yep.
Okay.
You kind of have to. You want to burn the PG to then not be able to use that free discard that you get out of it. So that does conclude the game. That was quite a game there. Whew.
Yeah, that was a great game from both sides. That was actually... I'm happy to have seen that. Like, that was great. Both players played spectacularly. Proof showing why Barrel Magnus is still a force to be reckoned with. Like, Sure,
Yep.
Barrel Magnus might not have gotten that grade 4 it much needed, but like you see now, like Barrel Magnuses, they only ever need that one copy in their ride deck, and from there they are smooth sailing because every turn they're getting their own Persona ride with that one counterblast.
Yeah, pretty much. And honestly, some of the rear guards like the Swirler and even Queenly, and then Bear Max bring out like the extra 10K on top of that. Honestly, the numbers are already pretty hard to guard, so I kind of understand not wanting to utilize the Persona. Like you only really need Soul Charge War. Like honestly, hitting that 15 soul is so important, and usually win you the game faster, especially if you're going first. That
Yep.
I think you can honestly go around Persona and be okay. The draw is nice, the 10K
Yeah.
front's nice, but so is doing Bear Magnus 15 soul skill.
Yeah. And I do want to point out the importance of that attack order we did see from Living Proof's last turn. Token Rambu also has those special PGs where you don't have to discard when your hand is 2 or less. If Proof actually swung with the Selfish Engraver first, and Aya was able to 1-card guard that, if one of the other cards remaining in Aya's hands was a PG, that Keenly would have been guarded easier as well,
Yep.
and then it would have gone straight back to Keenly's turn. So attack order does matter, especially when you have to like take into account like these kind of like special hand conditions. But besides that, both players play spectacularly. Aya giving a great demonstration as to what Token Rambu's potential is. I was very happy to see all the Hotaru Maru drip. Shoutouts to Aya, Hotaru Maru fan as well. And big shoutouts to Proof as well. Everybody knows and loves Proofs. But with that, we are going to head you guys straight into a break as we come back soon after with round 4.
Yep.
And we are back with Bushiroad Rumble Online 2022. It's Toka TV, and I am joined by the devourer of dump trucks, Peter. Peter, you were on the back scenes of these first 2 games that we saw. What did you think?
Man, I was thinking, I was like almost backseating personally. I'm like, man, you could have done this instead, or man, could have done that. I was, ugh. You know that feeling of like you see someone playing, and you just want to tell them what to do.
Yeah.
It's
now,
it's a feeling.
Now I'll ask you this. We've since the last BRO for Standard, a lot of new stuff have come out. As always, I'm always going to ask, what are you expecting? What do you want to see?
Well, I'm excited for Bruce personally. Like I've got a Bruce deck actually right here. I haven't updated it to what the build I'm considering is, but there was actually a third-party tournament that actually had a Bruce player go undefeated the entire time, which is really cool. And it was a very unique grade 4 Bruce list, where a lot of people will go for either a grade 3 Bruce list that runs something like Hellblast Full Dive and Leonard, or a grade 4 Bruce list that goes for an OTK that tries to win by using Pandemonium Tactics, Brian, and Brainwash Swirler with like Quen Lu, stuff like that. This list had grade 4 Bruce, but the rest of the main deck was more like a grade 3 list, where it ran those Leonards, it ran those Megans, it ran the Hellblast Full Dive, and it was working really, really well. And honestly, that's what I want to update it to, because it was so cool. And that's sort of like the Bruce playstyle that I came to really like with grade 3 Bruce. So I'm very excited for that. I would like to see something like that personally, but also there's some other really sick decks out there like Bapsagra. I love Bapsagra. That deck is so cool. You get to like big numbers, and you get to like just front row clear, and it doesn't choose. So that means it gets around things like, for example, the upcoming crossover dress, Verena Bills, or Bills Verena, and it gets around things like, for example, Fasado.
Yeah.
What are some decks you want to see, though?
Well, you mentioned Fasado, and Fasado very, very, very friendly with one of my favorite units in Overdress, and that's Bastion. Bastion kind of was like holding up like the front runner line of Overdress for a very long time. Set 1, Bastion and Alden was like definitely the news, as well as Bruce for sure. Set 2, still Bastion and Alden. Like, just the fact that the deck plays on grade 3 so much, and in early Overdress, how weak defensively the game was, with only 5k shields and triggers as like your main shield. values. Just being able to really like run your opponent down with these really strong grade 3 attackers, it really did show as to why Bastion was so strong. And then as we are coming up, like we now have set 4, where Bastion plays into its set 4, which, funnily enough, having those grade 4s in the deck also kind of makes Bastion a bit worse, but it does also introduce that ceiling. That is something I would love to see. But for you guys wanting to see something, I have the first deck of round 4 for you. So let's go ahead and bring up the first deck, and we can talk about what you guys will be seeing in round 4.
That's exciting. Whoa. Not Bastion. A different Keter Sanctuary deck. Actually one that we've seen successful in the AO and EU sides. Thegria. Now, Thegria was being used by Dave Vecht and by Karan Patel, which are both very good players who are very accomplished. Actually, I think Dave has topped every single format this BRO season.
Wow. Shoutouts to Dave.
Yeah.
But yeah, one of the cool things that Thegria has that most other decks don't is the fact that she has the text that she can Persona Ride over each other copy of herself. So with 7 copies of Persona Ride in your deck, you should be able to Persona Ride every turn almost. And each time you flip-flop between Angry Thegria and Happy Thegria, I'll call them, you do different effects. But I think mostly you want to like look to be on Dark Thegria as much as you can to get that Vanguard restand. And I do want to point out the K and Bedivere package. This is a pair of cards that have been like being introduced into Keter Sanctuary due to MLB's resurgence in set 5. But it's just a very strong small package that you can put in that like one searches the other, and you are able to get like a very easy board out of that.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's really cool that people have sort of figured out that kind of stuff. I think the idea of nations over clans is really cool in general because it allows you to sort of just mix these ideas that are technically intended for one thing into another idea, because it's like, oh, that sort of just works well with it, because Thegria is already a deck that likes those grade 2s anyways. So because of that, also Maple, for example, another one of those really strong grade 2s. Maple, I think, is like one of the strongest cards in Standard right now in terms of just how many things, like what it does and how generically good it is.
Mm-hmm. Now let's go ahead and see what Shadow will be up against. Player 2 for round 4. Let's go ahead and bring that deck in. It is Kogze. Kogze, a familiar name from the last BRO, playing in the V Premium format and representing Aqua Force. Let's go, woo-woo! And representing the country of Vietnam. I gotta love to see it. This time, Kogze is bringing in Gravidia.
And this is definitely like the build that really blew up starting around winter of 2021, especially from this BRO season, or from the previous BRO season, the Gravidia World build, where you can use the Eclipse Moonlight to actually get a Shadow Army token out on turn 2, so that you can actually build up a little bit of early aggression, because one of the issues that pure Gravidia had was that it did not have very many bodies on board, and that was partially because you had to run so many set orders compared to other Brantgate decks. So this allowed you to actually get some aggression and deal with board removal a little bit easier. And because you also have that extra recursion now, thanks to your, I think it was Bakuburito, you can actually get your orders back as well, which makes it so that you can actually run a little bit more consistently than before, which I think is a huge help, because that card also can get a crit, and it won't usually get the crit because it sort of controls how the opponent will build their board on their own turn, because it usually will deter your opponent from wanting to call 3 out. It will make them want to call 2 out or want to call 3 out, but one of them will go away at the end of the turn. That kind of stuff.
All right, so now that we've said our bit, let's go ahead and have the players show you what they're made of. Will Kogze be able to get the full Meteorite effect, or will Shadow be able to bring Thegria from the darkness into the light? Let's go ahead and start round 4 of Bushiroad Rumble Online 2022.
Man, I'm excited for this match right here. These are two pretty cool decks. Definitely one of the decks, like one of these decks people have been expecting to be successful, but Thegria has sort of been out of the blue, just a dark horse of this format, it seems.
Yeah, I agree. Like, a lot of Theria's wasn't really talked about like in social media or like a lot of like playtesting groups, but like we've been seeing Theria pop up very much after this BRO weekend. Like it's just having the first two other regions go ahead and start things off, and Theria's been popping up a lot. To like begin discussion, how do you think this matchup is going to go? We have like a board-based removal in Cogsay side of thing, and Thegria playing more on the board side of things as well, but having very easy ways of refilling the board.
I think that this might be more on the Gravidia side, but because that's not because of the board removal itself. It's mainly because of the fact that, well, things like Baku Burrito are such threatening cards once you can actually clear 3 or more things on the board at once. So that makes it so that if Shadow, for example, goes for a like a Bedivere K, then that will cause both of the, like, that will build up your board and fill it in a way that can't be emptied at the end of the turn, unfortunately. But another
interesting one to pass from Shadow.
One thing that's interesting to consider as well, the ride deck discard from turn 1 was a Maple, which means that the moment turn 3 starts, Maple is online, which is huge because Maple is very big for this deck. Not only for being a free call, but also for her rearguard effect when your Vanguard is Thegria, because that means that you get to actually get cards from your soul, which is huge because that's really good recursion.
Yeah. And basically, Maple also being part of like the gameplay loop that I will call it, being able to ride Thegria, call the Maple's effect to grab the other copy of Thegria for next turn. You have the Persona ride, intercept with the Maple, re-ride into the Thegria, call the Maple out again, and you just keep going until the cows come home.
Woo. And that's actually a horrible damage check for Cogsay.
Getting 2 meteorites.
Yeah, like it's 1 of each, which is big as well, because now that means that there's only 5 of the neatness meteor shower. Ugh,
pushing Cogsay to having to 2-card guard, even the rear guard attack too, is actually incredible. Like Diffuser Angel, despite it being a grade 1, got a lot of value on that turn that it was called out. Was able to set up your soul. Could have even like put another copy of a Thegria into soul. Gave the Vanguard this 5k, so that's 10k split from a 1 card in hand to soul. And like I'm guessing like on Shadow side of things, like once you start rolling with like that Thegria Maple loop, all this at hand that you're committing in the early game doesn't really matter too much. But hey, 1 to pass, that's a pretty good 1 to pass. That would be the over trigger. So Shadow, not having taken damage in that first turn, will be taking some damage here.
Yeah, I think Shadow is very glad that he guarded early this game, because this is huge right now. Hitting that over trigger just makes this board so much more threatening. I mean, like, doesn't really matter that you hit the... Well, this actually doesn't have the 100 million on it, I'm pretty sure.
I think the 100 million went to the Vanguard in order for it to hit. But the Shadow Army, because it's already 15k, getting that double power from the Overtrigger, becoming 30k, still able to hit over at least 1 defensive that Shadow might have gotten. I think it's interesting with how aggressively Shadow was guarding in the early game, that Shadow was able to actually have the PG condition live for that really big attack that could have pushed Shadow to lethal on the crackback right after this turn.
Yeah, that was big. Also, one thing that's interesting to consider here that Shadow made a really good play of is actually the usage of calling Maple over the rear guard, because Maple can actually remove herself at the end of the turn, which is big because that means you can play around the Baku Burrito a little bit by making you have only 2 rear guards at the end of your turn instead of 3. And if you do that, that means you get to actually conserve a little bit. You also are not dealing with a rear guard that has a crit. You're only dealing with a Vanguard with a crit. So that helps a lot in the late game. Like, just over time, that sort of like that momentum that builds up just from having a rear guard with a crit over time just doesn't happen.
Okay, so we will see Shadow use Light Thegria's first skill here. Once per turn, counter blast to check the top 5 cards of your deck and choose up to 1 grade 2 or less unit card from among them, come to rear and shuffle. But if you have the Dark in Soul, you can call 2 instead of 1. So it kind of goes to show with Keter Sanctuary having access to these very like unique cards that put cards from hand into soul. One being Drilling Angel and one being Diffuser Angel, which we just saw. Being able to set this up 1 turn ahead of time means that your grade 3 turn is just that much more aggressive. Instead of being a Counterblast 1 for a +1, you're getting Counterblast 1 for a +2, and these are selective pluses as well.
Yeah, it's really nice to be able to also, you're able to compress your deck a little bit, which means that your chances of hitting triggers later on is a lot higher as well. Usually those numbers don't happen until like you thin your deck of 2 or 3 cards, but you can actually then help search your deck as well through things like Bedivere. If you have a Bedivere, you can just use that. Another thing that's really nice in this deck is that Painkiller Angel, because Painkiller Angel you can use after you've used Maple to Soul Blast out the Maple you just sent to Soul.
Ooh, Shadow getting a good pair of drive checks there. One of them being a PG, especially on that low hand, is definitely something we want to see. And going to go ahead and swing with that Maple, use its skill here. And I do see the dark one there, which kind of like invites me to ask, I'm not sure, maybe the rest of the 5 cards that Shadow saw at the top 5 were 4 other triggers. So probably not worth leaving those on board. And I guess like in the same vein, not wanting to leave cards on board, in which case, what was it called again? Baki Burrito would be able to punish on.
Yeah, Baku Burrito is like sort of just this constant threat. Like, honestly, it existing in the deck it will affect how the player or how the opponent will actually play their game plan, because it will make you more likely to commit less to your board in general. And another thing to consider as well, calling only 1 rearguard puts a really awkward situation for Kagze here, because even if you get the grade 2 Meteor on here, you still will sort of waste a retire just to get the crit, effectively.
But either way, I do want to see Kagze be able to do what Guravidya can do on that first turn. That double crit, those like double trigger powers. Seeing 1 trigger is already enough to almost like tilt things in your favor. So let's go ahead and see here. We will be able to counterblast on swing, and we can do our meteor shower here into the drop zone. Gonna go ahead and get a count. I do believe that was 5 because of that other one counting as 2.
But luckily for Shadow, don't really have to care too much about like hitting OT anymore, because OT would just win the game right now. So yeah, this is just a no guard. If a crit happens though, that's game. Or not game, that's almost game. Wait, no, it is, because Vanguard has a crit, and you just give 2 crits to the Vanguard. So you need a heal right here. Oh, that is a heal.
Oh, that is a heal. Okay, so Shadow being able to sneak back into the game off of that heal trigger on lethal. Very scary for Shadow. And hopefully with those guards that we saw, especially with that 1 PG in hand that we do know that existing, Shadow should be able to hopefully make a good offensive here.
The problem here, though, is Shadow's only got 1 card in hand now. So, yeah, this is just a really rough situation, especially because the Maple is still in Soul. You can't call it out from drop. However, I do...
Any other copies of Maple in drop? It does not look like it.
Yeah, no, it's just Maple in there. So right now, you're just swinging with a restanding Vanguard. And this is where it gets rough, because you've had to commit a lot of cards from hand if you're Shadow right now. And
yeah,
this is just, in the war of attrition, you're not winning that very easily. And, oh.
Ooh, okay, so that's a 1 and a 3. Oh, and that's a defensive trigger as well. Now, we do have the Persona Ride.
That's exactly what I was going to mention, too. Like, didn't have to search for it, which is nice.
And Kagze not taking any risk here, not going to offer the chance to lose to a stray crit, going to give that PG. And with that being said, we're going to pass it back to Kagze. Shadow, having not really used too much hand this turn, does have some hand, 4 to be exact, but looking to deal with some really big attacks. I think right now we just need to wait for Kagze to get the meteors set up once again. We're not really looking for that double crit right now. We just want to abuse the fact that we gain double power from our triggers.
Yeah, this is... Oh, that double power came in clutch this game, because like that put so much momentum on Kagze's side, in addition to that over trigger just sort of forcing out a perfect guard way earlier than it should have. So it sort of made it so Shadow was just playing on the back foot since turn 2. So it definitely hurts, but I mean, Shadow does still have the Overtrigger in the deck, which, if Shadow hits it, probably will let them just survive.
Oh, and using Gravidia Shergo here to return some of the meteorites back to deck so we have them in rotation for future turns. Keeps up the pressure that Gravidia is able to put out. And with that, I guess the scary thing is, though, with Kog'Sae's uncompressing the deck. But we do see a lot of triggers in the damage zone there, so I'm really curious as to really how compressed their deck is. I'm going to call down that. This definitely does look like a very, very strong final push there. Just calling on the Meteors to gain that extra power, make it harder for Shadow to hard guard this attack.
Yeah, this just looks like a really strong push right now. And oh no, it's a no guard with a crit.
Alright, it's Meteor, and the 6 damage is just a crit, not a heal, and that will be the end of the game. Kog'Sae taking it home for Team VN with Gravidia.
Whew, that was a quick one. Wow.
They were playing pretty fast. They were playing pretty aggressive as well. Like, we saw how quickly Shadow was committing cards from hand to board, committing cards from hand to the Guardian Circle as well. I kind of like the idea is that eventually there comes a point where Gravidia being able to completely board wipe your side of things, and then being able to gain so much accidental power that guarding earlier is probably the best way to deal with it, because even come what we saw here, that big 4 damage turn, because we were at that lower damage point, we had more chances to get that heal trigger, which we did see Shadow do.
Yeah. Oof. That OT also just helped so much for that momentum as well, because it forced out, not only did it bring out 2 damage, but it also forced out more cards from hand.
Yeah.
And made it so that actually it forced a perfect guard out instead of just blocking with a regular trigger on the defensive.
Yeah. So very small nuances that we saw happen here, but I do think both players played very well. Kog'Sae being able to also kind of match the aggression that Shadow brought was definitely something I wanted to mention as well. I think it really did come down to being able to find that second Maple in time. That way you'd be able to shuffle the 2 in and out of Soul, as you are able to shuffle the Tegrias onto and off the Vanguard Circle.
Yeah, I agree. Also I think that potentially, I don't remember if Maple can actually send herself out of the Soul, but if she can, let me read her again just to make sure. No, you have to. She goes into the Soul at the end of the effect, so you can't Soul Blast herself, and because Shadow could not actually Soul Blast out through, say, a Painkiller Angel, it made it really difficult to get that Maple back into circulation, and that's a really big thing. Getting that Painkiller Angel, boosting the Maple, or just boosting the Vanguard, really helps, because you can not only clear 2 things in the Gravidia matchup. That's very good to be able to clear 2 of your things so that the Baka Burrito doesn't have a crit, but also it means that you're actually able to not only get more cards in your hand, but also you can actually get the Maple back into drop. Maple in drop is one of the strongest things. I know quite a few decks in Stoicheia do just use Maple because as well, and not just Stoicheia, but also Keter Sanctuary. I know I've seen a few PBO lists run Maple because it's just a free fodder every turn that you Persona ride.
Yeah, in the topic of PBO, we see a lot of cards in Keter Sanctuary that provide a dirty +1. A lot of call the top card of your deck to the rear circle, or check top 3, call 1. And on the topic of PBO, PBO doesn't really care about the quality of the cards you plus from, because it's just looking to retire them anyways. So cards like Maple, cards like the grade 3 Sorcerer, that was actually meant to be for another deck, I believe, being used in PBO just because of all the free bodies that they get. I think it's unique that we're finally starting to see a lot of this nation over clan stuff, where people are starting to dip into cards that were meant to be for other ride lines, and that is pretty much what I like about Standard right now.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think this idea of being able to mix decks that were not necessarily intended to be a part of the same deck, but happen to have that really good synergy, I think that's just really cool in general. For example, I know that before the Inlet Pulse Magnolia Elder choice restriction, I was actually playing that deck, and I had 1 or 2 Maples in the deck, just because if you discarded off the ride deck then you're just having a good time, because that means that it's effectively a free ride deck usage. And not only that, but with Magnolia Elder specifically, you can put that in the back row, intercept with it every single turn, and it's a free intercept.
Just being able to keep putting it, like cycling it back from the drop to the rear, back to the drop. I'm actually wondering if we'd ever see anything like that for Zorga. But I guess since Zorga has the dragons, they don't really have a strong need for it.
Right. I think you're exactly right, because Zorga just has that really good like recursion already. Maple sort of fills a niche that already is filled by most of the deck.
Yeah. So looking to be basically used by like other decks that like have a more need on that free rear guard body every turn. Wouldn't see it in Bastion, unfortunately, because Bastion does really care about that number on the top left that we see on cards. We want to see that three or higher. I'm hopefully that Bastion does kind of like move away from that, because as we see decks get stronger and stronger in the defensive side of things, Bastion, still staying on the grade 3 thing, will just have like in natural just lower shield value overall compared to most other decks. Whereas other decks will have those extra incidental 5Ks from those grade 2s, from those grade 1s that Bastion very much longs for.
Absolutely. And not only that, but like as the like game goes on, because the defensive options in general are not necessarily as strong as in other formats, the extra shield you can get just from having those grade 2s really matters a lot.
Yeah.
Especially because Bastion like already is running low shield in general.
Yeah. And I guess like we have one more game right here for you guys to hop right into, and we have Buddy J on a Nirvana on so that would be Kurt's Geo on Nirvana on the left, as well as Buddy J playing Rank 8 Prison on the right there. We already see the Overtrigger out of rotation for Buddy's side of things, but Kurt Zio having that very large hand, probably due to thanks to Mr. Nirvana Arcs there on the left there. But it looks like we also had Amelia. I wonder if we got a ride skip there, but it looks like Kurt Zio is gonna Persona ride? No, just gonna ride into the Seraph Pure Light.
I think that, yes, that is Seraph Pure Light, and wow, there's already 3 suppressed Gleamers out. That's pretty good to already get those out that quickly, because that card is like free deck thinning and also just a free +1. It's really good.
Yeah. The fact that it's able to call itself out, the fact that like it's already by itself a body that hits into most Vanguards is kind of crazy to say the least.
Yeah. Oh, we're getting the prison count right now. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, this is well above 10.
So... this is definitely well above 10. Like usually in this matchup, Nirvana against Prison, this is kind of what is expected to happen. For those who are unaware, the way it works with Overdress is that when you prison a unit in Overdress state, the top card and all of its underdresses also go towards Prison. So this is what you would definitely see happen, and we have even more cards in Prison now. And definitely over 10, so Pure Light being able to get that extra crit that it needs, or the entire front row getting that extra crit. But luckily, Kurtzio is only at 3 damage rather than 4, so one of these would be able to get taken. I'm not sure about the status on the Overtrigger, but that would definitely help on that first swing.
Do you see that number? 18 in Prison right now. 18.
Is that it? Oh, is that it? 18? Okay, so 9 counterblasts to free everything. Not too bad.
Yeah, and not only that, that's plus 45 to everything in the front row.
Oh, that's it. Oh, is that it? Oh. All right. Okay. Well, we're going to go ahead and see Seraph Pure Light here. Seraph Pure Light was actually one of the strongest decks to come out of set 4. But because of the lack of tournaments and events, hasn't really been able to see too much on that side of things. What's your thoughts on maybe like Pure Light being kind of sleeper compared to what else we've seen?
I think Pure Light definitely was a bit sleeper, like in comparison to things like Magnolia, for example. But Magnolia also was, not only was it like most people would agree the best deck at the time, but also it was one of Pure Light's worst matchups, which really hurts because it's sort of the same sort of dynamic that in set 2 Bruce and Bastion had, where Bastion was a very good deck, but Bruce was its worst matchup because it would just clear the board and hit a lot of times for really big numbers.
Right, throwing down that PG right there. Don't want any business with those triple drives. 1, 2. That looks like a trigger.
That's a crit.
That's a crit. Okay. That makes that column right there lethal.
Yeah, you just need to hit one more crit. Okay, no. So, one of these you can take. The other one, honestly, you
Gotta
don't
be
even
PG.
have to.
Gotta be a
like,
PG here.
Oh no, I saw the hand gesture and I'm like, wait, was that a no guard? Because this is really big right now. That's plus 45 on a 13 and then already a plus 10. So that's 23 plus 45. That's 68 plus another 13. 81! Oh my goodness.
That's a really big number. All right. Does Curcio have a PG for this attack? Holding 2 cards. I'm thinking they do. But they might also have to play on a heal. They might have to play on a heal because even if they PG this one, they do have to take the other one, which is like we said, not the worst. It does give us another turn, so this is the attack you have to guard if you want to be able to continue playing the game.
Yeah, the other number's 68, so like not nearly as threatening, but still, that's not the one you have to block.
Yep. That's not the one that's going to send you to 0 HP. Still, I guess again getting a power count there still, but what can Buddy J do? Because we need Counterblast from Mahar skill. We need Counterblast to free things out of prison. If all of our Trick Stars are in prison, that's not a good look either.
Yeah, this is a really rough situation right now. Oh
1,
no, you have
2,
to take this.
3, and it looks like Curcio had to take the attack. Probably did not have the PG in hand. Was probably playing for like a heal or an overtrigger to try and just kind of like run through the turn. But even then, things were looking very rough with that very, very full prison.
Yeah, that prison was like filled to the brim. Like it would spill out if you put any more cards in there.
I'm trying to actually, because like it's this matchup was probably one of the hardest things for Nirvana. Like we said, because of the fact that when you imprison an overdressed unit, everything goes to prison. It's just hard. It just gets really hard to get stuff out of prison. Because that's a Trick Star you need to pull out. That is the overdressed unit you need to pull out of prison. And when you pull them out, they don't go into the overdressed state anymore. So you lose a lot of very like valuable on-place effects. It's like before prison really got like certain cards. This kind of matchup, you would see a lot of like Trick Star beatdown, where you just call your Trick Stars. You just go like, what is overdress? Persona Ride. These things hit for 15k, but you can't prison them.
Yeah, no, like I remember like set 1 prison, like because they didn't have any way to imprison things outside of from the board. Nirvana, you would just call down your Trick Stars.
Yep.
And then you would call down like a regular Verena, for example.
Yep.
And then just because the grade 3 Nirvana does not care about things being in the overdress state. It just cares that you have cards with the overdress ability.
Yep.
You could just give plus 10k to the Trick Star anyways. And to the base Verena. The base Verena would be swinging for 25 because it would be boosted by a Trick Star as well.
Yeah.
You're just denying the opponent so much.
Yeah. But then as prison got more and more cards and ways to kind of like prison without needing it from the board, we got some like prison from hand. We got prison from the top of the deck. And then as Nirvana started to get stronger and stronger as well, where they did want to play more into the overdress ability, prison kind of like capitalized on it, and that's what we probably saw in this match there. Why we saw so many cards in the prison that was able to have a Pure Light gain that 45k buff. Is that what we said?
Yeah, 45 because it was 18 cards.
45k buff. Who needs Persona Ride when you can give 45k buff to their front row?
Yeah.
Holy.
That's terrifying to say the least.
But you guys got a very nice feature. 2 matches in 1 round. Mm-hmm. So now it's time for us to take a break as we get round 5 ready for you guys. And we will see you soon.
Welcome back, everyone, to Bushiroad Rumble Online. And, man, that was an exciting round 4. And I think we actually do have some standings ready.
All right, bring up the standings. All right, starting us off at 16, I believe everyone here is holding us strong at 4-0. We have Unironic Vanguard. And at 15, FE26 Fallert. 14, we have Ryuta. 13, Wafer Maker. That's a familiar name. 12, we have Yusha from MT. At 11, we have Zephy. And at 10, we have Kisa, our feature match from the first round. And at 9, we have Alex Troyer. Bring us to the top 8, please.
And for the top 8, we've got Adrian Barber, a.k.a. Gecko State. I think we've actually seen him top in V Premium as well. And we've got Sleepy PSI in 7th. Terrathrox, that's what it is. Terrathrox in 6th. Armyrb in 5th. Big Daddy IO in 4th. Lou in 3rd. Giddy in 2nd. And Kagze, we all know and love him, in 1st.
And those are our top 16 going into round 5 of Bushiroad Rumble Online 2022 for the standard format. Now, we do know a few names there. We saw Kagze playing Gravidia World, and we saw Kisa playing Tamayura. What else do you think would be seeing in as like the days as the tournament comes dwindling down and we get more of the culling, so to say? What decks will stand out above the rest?
You know, I definitely want to see maybe a little bit of Bruce. I mean, we talked about it last round, so that'll be exciting to see. And, I mean, personally, I think a deck that got buffed quite a bit from its new Grade 3 and will be getting even more strong support in Set 6, Orphist. I would love to see some Orphist.
What about Orphist makes it so strong, do you think? Because I've talked to a few people as well myself, and even with Fest Collection, they weren't exactly sold on the new Orphist. What in your testing has been really the big highlights of Orphist?
Well, the big thing is that in the future, they are getting the new Grade 3 that allows you to call a Shadow Army token when it's retired, which means you can open up your multi-attack a little bit more than right now. But right now, the fact that you can still get multi-attack in Orphist, which is a deck that already hits decently big numbers, is huge, because that means that you can really just actually push out more hand, because that was one of the problems. A lot of decks that are 3-attack decks have that issue of like, okay, you've got big rear guards, but why should I care if they hit? And now you have big rear guards more than 3 times. So you can actually at least do something. I think it's currently not like the strongest deck right now, but I think it has a lot of potential, especially because of like all this multi-attacking, especially because of Destajade, for example. Destajade has a really good turn 4 combo with a lot of this stuff.
Go ahead and elaborate on that combo, Destajade.
Okay, so with Destajade on turn 4, if you already had tokens out, let's say you had 3 tokens out already. You swing with the tokens, you swing with Destajade. You use Destajade skill, restand. Then you swing with the Vanguard, call out more tokens, you swing with the tokens again, you swing with Destajade again, and then you restand Destajade again because you have another 3 tokens. This is a turn 4 play.
Okay, yeah.
But then, because of that, you're able to then generate 6 attacks in 1 turn on your 4th turn. So, sort of like a Bruce turn in a way.
And that's not bad at all, to be honest.
Yeah.
6 attacks. That's double the amount that they normally get.
Yeah, exactly. And because of the world order that actually gives your tokens extra power, that can get really threatening over time. And if you hit any crits, that Destajade gets more and more scary.
All right. So that's enough from us. I do know that our first deck for the viewing is up. So let's go ahead and see what our first deck will be in round 5. Rumble Online 2022. And there we have it. Just will into existence, and we have a Bruce. And this is the grade 4 variant of the Bruce, but we also see, similar to what you've said, I see some Lenards here as well as the Marjorie, one of the most cards in Bruce, to be honest. I'm going to let you take the reins on this one, Peter.
Yeah, so an interesting thing here is not only does it run the grade 4 Bruce, but it also runs 1 main deck copy of grade 3 Bruce. So that means that you have a Persona Ride play as well. This is definitely also a more unique build as well, because I've seen a lot of builds that run Leonard will then run Hellblast Full Dive. Not this one. This one's running Hellblast Full Dive and Pandemonium Tactics. It's sort of going for like a little bit more of the OTK side, but it doesn't have the swirlers. So you're mainly threatening with a big crit Vanguard with decent rear guards here, instead of, say, like a Vanguard that doesn't have any extra crits but bigger rear guards. But the Megan does help as well, because the Megan gets bigger every single time. The Dober is a fantastic combo piece as well with the Megans, because you can use or you can boost Megan with Dober. If you have another Megan, you use that Dober to give that other Megan power as well. So then you're swinging 28, 30, and then Vanguard, and then you're swinging 30, and then you're swinging 30 and then 40, and then your Vanguard as well. This is not counting any triggers or orders as well, so these get a lot bigger, and man, that's terrifying. Also, an interesting thing, playing that order, or not order, playing the grade, or the heal trigger that actually gets extra shield on restanding rear guard. Or no, that's the crit one.
Nope, that is the restanding one, the one that has attacker types. Let's see if this heal trigger comes up huge in the matchup. Let's go ahead and see what Stuart Wyatt will be playing up against. Bring me deck 2, please. Oh, so you know what? Sometimes we can just definitely will things into existence. So this friendly fire is playing Orphist. And then Orphist with the new card here, Orphist Regis. And we, like you said, we do have that set of orders, as well as I know that grade 1, and I know that grade 1 is actually kind of crazy. What do you know about this grade 1, Peter?
This grade 1, which one? I'm guessing you're not talking about the one from set 2, correct?
I'm not, no.
Okay, so that grade 1 is actually decent enough. It's a card that actually calls a Shadow Army token after it attacks or boosts. Or no, it actually is multi-attack enabling because it retires another Shadow Army token. So because of that, you can actually, if you have a Shadow Army token already out, you can use that to get an extra attack. So you can get more attacks. Your combos can really get bigger anyways. You can get your 6 attacks technically anyways with this. Because you can use her, Cardinal Prima Ecolpa, that's her name. She's actually from DBTO2, so technically Orphis did have a way to get a Shadow, or sorry, no, doesn't call out. It clears up a row, which means that then you're not calling over, but you're still able to get your resources back, which is big because this deck does not run Bobble Mine, and because it does not run Bobble Mine, your counter charge is not as big. So you do actually have to still, like, build back up your resources because you get pretty counterblast intensive thanks to Eclipse Moonlight and Orphis Regis together.
And I do like the new card here we see in Cardinal Draco, Kojamid. Between Kojamid and all the shadow tokens that we are able to present, our back row is actually very strong. Our back row, our boosters, they're all already at like magic numbers. Like boosting for 15 is very good in the center column. Boosting for 10 is also very good. These are very good numbers to boost with as we use like our entire, like we can use our grade 1s to attack with. Our shadow tokens are already at 15, which is only 2k over 13k, so a lot of this power budgeting doesn't really go wasted. But that's enough from us. I want to see what the players have to do. Let's go ahead and fire this match off with friendly fire versus what's his name again? Stuart Wyatt, and we can begin round 5 of Bushiroad Rumble Online 2022.
I'm pretty excited for this match personally, because honestly, Bruce and Orphist have always had a very interesting matchup, especially Bruce builds that ran Leonard, because a lot of the time Leonard was good because it could help clear the opponent's board, but in a deck that can actually just build its own board back up without using any hand, like for example Orphist, that dynamic sort of goes away. So
But do you think that being able to produce a board so easily plays into Leonard so easily? Because Leonard would be able to then attack that 15k column pretty much for free. And then, like you said, because Orphist is so easily able to refill that board, they'd be more inclined to no guard it, in which case Leonard would be able to get a lot of its value back.
Well, that would be the case if it were a grade 3 Bruce build, but because this is grade 4 Bruce, Leonard actually is not getting much value outside of just soul charging more. And that's extra soul charge in a build that's already doing quite a bit of soul charge thanks to Pandemonium tactics might deck out, which could be interesting as well, because that might mean that you're actually more inclined to let those Shadow Army tokens get hit, because you don't care if they go away, and instead you can actually use that to your advantage and say, okay, I'm going to try and play a grind game and win because of that from deck out.
Okay, very insightful. Now, like you said, so I'm guessing you think that like Orphis would then have like the upper hand in this case. We do see that Stuart Wire did play that extra copy of the Violence Bruce for the Persona Ride line, for the Persona Ride opportunity. Do you think that maybe looping the Persona Rides using a copy of itself, as well as if I believe if this deck still runs it.
I don't think it
I don't think it
runs
runs. I don't think it runs the Proto Bulb to be able to loot the Persona rides. But do you think maybe doing something like turn 3, then go into Persona ride, and then the turn after go into the Grade 4 Bruce might be the best way to handle this?
I actually think that like going for that Persona ride play would actually be the correct play in this matchup, specifically because it allows you to then get extra value off of the Leonard, because you can use Marjorie, you can use Dober, things like that to be able to get back your Dobers, for example. If you can get back your Dobers, then that means that you can actually make, say, for example, they have a Megan. You can make that Megan gigantic.
Okay. Do you ever think that there's value because Unrivaled Bruce, would it be like the Soul Choke that you think that would be better to stay on the Bruce rather than the Unrivaled Bruce? Because they both have similar costs. They both need to Soul Blast 5. But the Counter Blast, do you think that makes a big difference here? Where like maybe Friendly Fire will look like Counter Blast Choke Stewart, in which case having to stay on Violence Bruce would have to be like the only option available.
I think that, yeah, that Counter Blast denial might be a play here, especially because, well, you can use, well, Friendly Fire here could use actually just swing at the rear guard here, just to try and get like it so that you can't go for a Pandemonium Tactics. Although it might be risky because then Stuart Wyatt might just not call anything afterwards and just say, okay, you have to hit me now.
Okay, actually looking to guard here, guarding the Shadow Token. Maybe that was going to the Leonard, like you said, since now that Leonard is there and threatening, and Friendly Fire also decided to, I believe, put a rear guard behind the Vanguard, which makes Leonard attacking into the Vanguard that much easier.
I think that's exactly the... Yeah, you're 100% correct.
Yeah. So attacking the Leonard, and it looks like, it was a 1-2 pass that did hit because of the heal trigger there. And then now we're going to go ahead and ride into the Bruce.
And this will be interesting to see how this plays out, because Stuart Wyatt could, for example, swing at rearguard and prevent any resources from being built for Friendly Fire here, because that's another thing. You can prevent resources from being built and then make it so your opponent can only really drip feed you damage. And Bruce, in general, because it's a slower starting deck than most, you actually do have trouble sometimes in terms of, like, if you take too much damage early, you just have a lot of issues with dealing with that, like, you know, like dealing with those early pushes, and then, oh no, I have to burn actual pieces to guard.
And it looks like Friendly Fire was able to kind of like get away from this turn scotch-free. Like you said, Bruce having that very vanilla turn 3 ride. No effects until the next turn there. Just able to call a grade 1 to the back and just swing with it. So no Derek's to, no Leonards to actually kind of like try and force more cards out of Friendly Fire's hand. I wonder if there was ever an opportunity for Stuart to actually hold that Leonard in their hand, because we know that Leonard is more important while on Bruce.
I think actually Stuart might have just been thinking, okay, Leonard is not really as good in this matchup. I might just let it die early so that I can actually keep my pieces that are better in the late game in this matchup. Like, for example, Megan. Megan's a very good card. Oh.
It looks like we are using Regis' skill to activate World card from the hand or drop, put it in the order zone, which activates it, which lets us get that extra Shadow Token out. Now, this will be able to get us, I believe, one extra attack on this turn.
Yes.
But we don't have any counterblast, so no extra attacks, it looks like.
One thing to consider here, though, is no, you can countercharge because of that grade 1.
Because of that grade 1, we are able to countercharge, which gets us that another token back. Okay, we're playing here.
Yeah, that's why that tech card is pretty good. It lets you just like build up your, well, not only build up your like resources, but also lets you like clear the board to for example, call something new. Which, I mean, most of the time that doesn't really matter, but like, oh, whoa.
Oh, that's
2 damage right there.
Yeah, that's a really good time to flip that, especially with a standing front row. Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's 2 damage.
And
no defensive triggers onto Stewart's side of things. And this is a big Shadow Token.
Yeah, and not only is this a big Shadow Token, the other one is big too, because those Shadow Tokens were already at a base +5 because of that order in there, in the order zone already, that gives all your tokens +5 static.
Right, and this is going to force out another set of cards from Stewart's hands, or maybe just going to force the fifth damage. That's a heal. That is a heal. Stewart being able to stay alive just a bit longer. Here's the 6 damage. Also a heal. Okay.
So
wait, was that a heal? Oh, no, that was a crit.
Yeah, no, that was a crit, but that means that Stewart was able to get away with this turn relatively okay. And okay, going for the grade 4 play here. Probably wants to end it as soon as possible, because that's one thing as well. Friendly Fire did have to discard to call the token out. So that does mean that that hand is not necessarily as healthy as it could have been.
You know what Stewart's thinking here? You know what would be great for Stewart right now? Their own overtrigger. Getting that extra crit on the Bruce. A standing Vanguard. 2 swings of crits. One way to try and get back into the game there. And I think that's Derek.
It is Derek, and that's big, because using Derek's skill here allows you to not only clear that pesky grade 1, but it also allows you to rebuild your board, which is very nice. And it also allows you to Pandemonium Tactics a little bit easier as well, which can definitely come in clutch. Ooh, wow. That's a really good set of calls.
Okay,
there.
those are pretty good calls. Holy.
Like, the Bruce, that's fine. But the Megan is gigantic, because the Megan, I mean, gigantic is probably the right word to use here, because that card gets plus 10 every time she attacks. Megan is so nice.
Yeah. So starting off the attacks here with the Bruce and then Megan going up to 20k. This is going to force another damage trigger out, and we do get a damage trigger there. That does set us up for 23. However, because Megan does gain that extra 10k on the swing, going to be a nice and juicy 30 next time.
Yeah, it gets so big. Unfortunately, there was no Pandemonium Tactics to really... Or was there?
I don't believe I saw Pandemonium Tactics go off. But, ooh, that does look like a crit trigger. So, going to go ahead
that was a heal.
That was a heal. That's even better, actually. Helps Stewart get back into the game after that overtrigger. So, overtrigger on Friendly Fire side of things, not in the game anymore, but it is live for Stewart. We do have one drive check left with the Vanguard. Do we find it on this one fateful drive check here? Going to go ahead and Soul Blast our 5 cards and stand our entire front row. Who needs rear guards in the back row? We stand our front row. Football. Let's go, baby.
And a big thing here to consider as well, because that Dober skill also activated, that means that these numbers are pretty healthy right now, even though there's a defensive check.
Oh, and here's that heal trigger coming in. I believe, was that the heal trigger?
That was the heal trigger that... Wait, what? Wait, let me check again to see if that is. Just to make sure. Yes, it was that heal trigger. Actually runs 4 copies of it.
Actually, going all in on the base 2 crit play. Okay, I can respect it. I guess it does help. Actually, no, it doesn't help as much. I think the Restander would be probably the ideal heal trigger to play in this matchup. But that also brings up that discussion about sometimes you will opt to play the wrong heal trigger, and therefore you're going to lose a bunch of 5k shields by accident.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's an interesting part of the standard metagame right now, where you have to think, okay, what do I think I'll see more? Something that gains a crit or something that restands? And right now, mostly it's something that something that gains a crit. So normally that's the right play, but then that allows for you to make those sort of meta calls as well, saying, okay, people are probably going to be playing that specific heal, so then I can play a deck that plays around that, so that their shield values are lower.
Now, over on Friendly Fire side of things, we do see that we do have 5 of our world cards in the order zone. And for every 2, our Orpheus Regius is able to call an extra Shadow Army token. So this does get us our 5 attack pattern here.
Not only that, but there are 2 buff orders. So that means that every Shadow Army token is getting plus 10, which means that that's 25. So you don't even care if you get a Persona Ride.
Alright, gonna go ahead and basically countercharge, counter blast. And we're going to wipe our tokens to call 2 new ones out. So those 2 new ones, because of Regus, gain an extra 10k. And then because of the Overcoming the Eternity, gains another 10k. So these are very, very large.
Oh, that was so smart as well. Discarding the Penguin to be able to actually get an order, or a set order from the deck.
Just little things that like thin the deck by one, just to be able to get it that much closer to maybe a front trigger, maybe a crit trigger. Crit trigger is what you're looking for here, at least on the Vanguard swing, if Stewart is offering that no guard. But every trigger counts when you're going for the kill.
Wow, there's that over trigger. Seeing it already, which means that this is a no pass because, well, the Vanguard.
Yeah, the over trigger is out.
Yeah. Oh no.
Oh, that's a big front trigger, I think. That's a big front trigger.
These are both hitting for the same number because of that draw trigger.
Oh, and I think that was a 2 to pass, which means that attack did hit.
How was that a 2 to pass? Oh, was that a Persona Ride turn as well?
Oh, it might have been a Persona Ride turn as well.
Oh no. Oh.
And that'll be it. That'll be the 6 damage. Unfortunately, not getting that 6 damage heal that Stewart wanted. And the game goes to friendly fire, playing that Orphis Regis. Like, it's very funny because normally we've always thought about Bruce.
Yeah.
You know, we've normally always thought about Bruce. Like, Bruce was the boogeyman of the format. Set 1, set 2, set 3, set 4. All we could ever really talk about was Bruce. But we even saw Bruce here get the first play of the game. But in the end, it was Orphis that kind of, like, took it away. And, like, yes, we can kind of talk about the fact that, like, the overtrigger was triggered offensively for the Orphis side, which, as we see, provides so much offensive pressure. But even then, Bruce was still able to kind of, like, play afterwards, but didn't really put too much of an offensive pressure that we normally see from it.
Right. Because that's one of the things we also talked about as well during that game as well, where Bruce generally wants to stay at that, like, maybe once it starts to ride up, it wants to be at like 2 damage maybe, because it doesn't want to give too much, like, it wants to give a buffer for when, like, random things like that where it's just like, okay, I might just lose this turn, so I have to just put down cards. It does not want those situations because it's a very piece-reliant deck. And because of that, that overtrigger really helped as well because it was a very healthy board that was being given that overtrigger.
It was just like a lot of surprise was probably how I'll put it. I don't think, like, especially with how slow Bruce is to start up, like you said, I don't think they were really expecting to take so much damage early on that led them to hit that 4th damage all of a sudden. Like, we saw that they were actually already planning on taking the 5th and 6th damage per game. So at that point, they were already saying, oh, it happened. Oh, well. And sometimes it does happen. It is a fact of the game at the moment, and therefore, sometimes you just have to deal with it. But over on the Orphis side of things, being able to just, like you said, like the grade 1 now, I don't think it was played too much before, but El Culpa, being able to boost the Vanguard to then basically every turn have that venue of cycling that counter charge, that counter blast, to be able to use to call more shadow tokens out. Basically, that is what Orphis has come down to, and I think it's a very good evolution of the deck.
Yeah, not only that, but also the fact that you can, like, guarantee every single turn that you're able to use Orphis Regis's skill, which is nice. Because Orphis Regis definitely has that, like, opportunity to be able to, like, okay, I can just keep getting my multi-attacks as long as I can just force that counter charge every single time. And that makes it so that there's a lot less counterplay around it, because that means you can function at 1 damage, which is very nice.
All right. And with that, right as we head into round 6 of Bushiroad Rumble Online 2022 for the Overture Standard format, we're going to send you guys to another quick break as we get round 6 ready for you. Stick around because these games have been very exciting.
Hello and welcome back to Bushiroad Rumble Online. Today I have now with us Peter! Yay! Woo! And I'm back. So Peter was here before and now I'm back. The orange is back. So yeah, I'm pretty excited for the next upcoming rounds. I watched you guys go through that Orphis match and that was pretty insane. I actually really love Orphis, so I was really happy to see Orphis being utilized there, and it was just really cool to see. Got to see the Penguin came into use and all that world cycling, multi-attacking Regis type of style. So pretty excited about that. What do you want to see upcoming next, Peter?
I want to see something goofy. I want to see something silly. You know, like, we've already seen one collab. I want to see more collabs. Imagine if we get more collabs right now. That would be crazy. That would be so funny. You know,
Would it be funny?
it would be funny. It would be goofy. It would be zany.
Wow.
Quite silly, one could say. But I mean, like, honestly, I'm just a fan of whatever because most decks in this format I really like. Like, I think some decks are in a rough spot. For example, like MLB, I think could use a bit of a buff, but and like some Token Rambu decks could use a buff. But I think a lot of decks are in a good spot of like, even if they're not like that strong, the power level between like the worst deck and the best deck in the format are not so insurmountable compared to other formats. Like, for example, the difference between like Mill Mega Colony in V Premium versus Orange Lander in V Premium is way bigger than the difference between like MLB and, let's say, Kyrie. The difference between MLB and Kyrie is at least they're like in spitting distance of each other, where it's like, okay, if you hit a few good triggers here, you might be able to win it if you also play it well. Versus like other formats, because of how much more of a card pool and how much more development a lot of their decks have gotten, it makes it so that like the difference between like a well supported deck and a deck that maybe was left in the dark a little bit, have a bit of that difference, like have a bit more of a noticeable difference. So
I agree. I think aside from like maybe like two decks, which is a Eugene and a Hexa, for the most part, most decks can come back. But I also think the gap between like the best deck and the lowest deck isn't like as big as it is in like the other two formats. So I think having that accessibility where you can play those like I guess best way to play Sakier decks, because you kind of need a little bit more to push them, but you can still play them and actually come through even like a little bit. But you talked about some collapse stuff and all that kind of stuff. So let's go ahead. I see that we have our player decks ready. Let's go and see what is coming in store for us for the upcoming round. Woo! My goodness gracious. I wasn't expecting that reaction. So this is indeed Record of Ragnarok. And I actually know a Record of Ragnarok player, and this is a very, very early aggressive deck because it gets like a lot of passive 5k front row type of stuff. So it's gonna be interesting to see. You throw up your whole hand and just hope you kill before your opponent does anything. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Zeus is definitely like, I know that I have a few friends also that have been looking at the Record of Ragnarok stuff. People have been saying, if you're playing Record of Ragnarok, you're either playing Brunhilde or you're playing Zeus. Because right now, those are the decks that have the most complete support. I know they are getting extra support. At least in Japan, they're confirmed to be getting extra support. So that does mean that there's more opportunities for these decks to get a little more developed, and also a few more opportunities to get some new decks. Like, I know I'm excited for maybe a Hercules deck or a Buddha deck. Buddha deck would be so sick. But I think it's cool that like these decks have very unique playstyles as well. Because I know that Token Ranbu has a lot of stuff where it's like, okay, this deck does something similar to what you've seen in the past. And that's a thing I've noticed with a lot of collabs. A lot of collabs do things that are like older decks from other formats are known to do. Like, for example, one of the decks in Record of Ragnarok is just like Narukami, which is really cool. And this one, I actually don't know much about Zeus. What playstyle would you say it's most like?
Aggro, push, attack a bunch, keep pushing, use order, push more. It plays more like PBO, like current PBO. Like, it's just very aggressive, but with less draw. But before we continue on in this discussion, we'll see more of it in the actual match. Let's go and see deck 2.
Yeah, let's get into that. Ooh, another deck we actually mentioned a little bit earlier on stream about would be cool to see. Bavsargra. Now, this is a deck that also received a bit of new support as well in that festival collection. It got that new grade 2 you see right there, the blue one at 4 copies. It's pretty good, actually. Like, it gets a lot of nice stuff. You get a lot of nice bonuses for which arms you have. And then there's also that grade 1 that also gets bonuses for which arms you have. Getting +5 and also getting the ability to intercept. So,
yep,
pretty strong. And because of that, this deck becomes tanky, super tanky.
Yep, I agree. I think you can also kind of board wipe a little bit with that Eugene and plus the buff Sagara retire. So I'm pretty excited to see all the new grade 2. Looks like our players are ready. So let's go ahead and switch on over to the match and see these two decks go in action. Vanguard Restanding Crit versus Super Early Aggro. Let's see what happens.
Yeah,
not Restanding, but
very interesting to see because I mean, I'm looking at these Zeus cards a little bit right now. Seeing on attack stand a rear guard is giving me flashbacks to one of my favorite decks, Nova Grappler.
Yeah, it does. It does have a little bit of a multi-attacking type of approach, and I said restanding crit because every time I face buff Sakura, I always see the OT come out, so I always get the double restand. It's so painful.
Honestly, no. There's a guy at my locals that plays buff Sakura. He's actually a pretty good player. He actually just started relatively recently, only like at the start of the year, and within the first few months of him really consistently going to locals, he actually topped his first ever event that he ever went to. He got top 8 as one of the only buff Sagra players.
Oh, was that the person? Because I do remember there being a buff player.
Yeah, at BSF New Jersey, he was one of the only ones. That team actually also had the only Nirvana player in top 8 as well.
Nice. Here we have the right line skill activate there, getting a one of the arms orders. So that's what we saw, and going for the shield, one of the strongest cards in the entire deck, being able to just not have to waste your hand as much.
Mm-hmm. A thing to consider as well is that this build is it's not running the sword at all. It's only running Swayonbu, the shield. So that actually means that if you don't get or if you hard draw the Swayonbu by accident in your opening hand, you can't really search anything.
Oh, I see. That's true. It only searches for very specific arms, so that does make sense. I actually kind of it's been a second. I kind of forgot that was like part of the condition of the search. But at least here I guess we could try and get what you need.
Yeah, and this build is actually very interesting. This is one that I've seen, like, for example, a different fight was playing a build like this of running the 4 spear and the 1 shield and no other arms. So this allows you to have more shield value in your deck because you could search out the shield as well. That means that you're really only running 4 orders effectively.
Yep, exactly. Kind of lowering the chance of cluttering your hand. And here we have kind of like a little bit of an early rush going on with Zeus. So you kind of want to do stuff like this, and that is a crit there, nice and early. Very, very good pressure. This is what you kind of want to do with this deck, as all them get power. We saw a heal come through as well. Was that it was a heal. So it's just you kind of want to push with this deck. So I think that grade 1 should still be hitting. It has 2K.
It doesn't.
Oh no, he had to
double defensive.
Oh, you're right. It was up post plus 20, yep, 28, and then the rear guard was, I believe, 20 total. So yeah.
Yeah. So that really helped a lot because not only was that a double defensive, but it was the perfect set of double defensives. It was a draw specifically into a heal. So not only did you get to draw a card, you got to then heal that damage, so you effectively didn't get hit by a crit.
Yep, exactly. Here we have the grade 2 setup to grab what you need for the discard, and then now we're attacking with the grade 1, which is actually a Eugene card, but works really well in Balsagar as it's like extra shield based off your opponent's drop zone.
Yes, Fushimachi Madoka is a very nice card. The fact that it's not only a booster, which is nice. I actually remember seeing a lot of Balsagar players were playing this the moment that the start deck came out, because it's like, okay, well, it's a booster, and it allows my deck to be a little bit tankier. That's sort of the direction that Bob Sagra has gone as well. I think that's really interesting that, like, people started it as like, okay, this is a tanky deck because of that shield, and you can run a lot of high shield cards, and that's sort of how people have like been like, okay, this is what's good in the deck, because sort of a different direction from most 3-attack decks, where most 3-attack decks will be like, okay, put crits on everything and then just swing big. This deck still swings big, but only the Vanguard has a crit, and instead you're just very tanky.
Yep, exactly. And here we have on Zeus size of things, so we're going into the grade 2, you can look at top 5 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 grade 2 among them as a god card, and call it. So here we have kind of maybe some early aggression, because also there's a bigger scale when it attacks your front. If your front row has 3 gods, everything gets 5k. Oh, sorry, this unit gets these units get 5k. So essentially you can have the Vanguard get plus 15 on attack, and then the rear guards will also gain a little bit of power here too. So kind of see like a little bit of that Zeus rush that I brought up earlier.
Yeah, I mean, like, we saw an attempt at it last turn, but unfortunately that double defensive sort of shut it down. But now there's a good chance at, like, at least trying to get it again this turn.
He's all, and we got the order. I'm pretty sure that's the order being used here as well, which is also, if you have Zeus as your Vanguard, you get another 5k to your front row. So this is sort of the play you want to go for on turn 2. You want to get the 5k on top of the 5k. We did see all the 5k stack here, so everything's attacking for pretty much 20. And then we also have the booster coming out too there in the back row. So this is gonna be a very aggro turn. Like the only downside to this, as you can see here, our Zeus player does not have a hand. So
I mean, you don't need a hand when you've got 0 damage.
Exactly.
So like you don't really care too much. Although, one thing to consider is if Plasmafish has the spear in hand, that calling out all the hand out to the board here might come back to bite them, because that means that you will just lose 2 cards, which means that you just have to rely on your drive checks giving you good stuff.
I didn't realize the hand was up top, so there's a little bit of a hand. Normally players keep it like right by, but wow, going to 4 that really fast. But this player does have 3 cards in hand, but it kind of looked like there was nothing. The black blended in with the keyboard.
Yeah, but I mean,
here we go into Bob.
3 cards in hand here.
Not much. Most. Yeah.
So it's still pretty troublesome, especially because if you can get the spear out right now, which no spear. If Plasmafish had gotten that spear out right here, then that would have been perfect, because not only would it have helped clear the board and sort of punish that dumping of the hand, but also would have gotten a crit, which would have led to a bit more like threatening plays here as well. Because okay, well, you have to decide, do you want to dump your hand on calling or defending?
Exactly, because that early, any form of that double front row retire that Buff Saga provides is actually really nice and very hard to deal with in some situations. Normally, and especially in Overdress, you always have front row units for whatever reason, unless you're playing decks that can get rid of them, like Magnolia and whatnot. But for the most part, usually you do have front row because you need to keep attacking, and knowing that every turn that they're going to keep going away, it makes it harder to keep bringing out attackers. And here we have going full combo. What's up?
That spear was damage checked, which... because there's only 3 left in the deck. So if Plasmafish had maybe guarded a little bit in these earlier damage checks, then they would have been able to actually get not only the spear, but also be able to just clear the front row. And because of the Travis, it would have been also the retire for the back row as well. You would have cleared 3 cards.
Yes, exactly. I think the situation was those numbers were so high. I don't think Plasma could have guarded, or if they did guard, they would have had to drop like triggers for it, and I think they're kind of holding off on that instead, just soaking the damage now and then maybe try to use an approach of healing. More shots for healing here. 3 cards in hand, it's like, what do I guard with? Plus Vanguard is pretty big with the Trick Moon, so...
Yeah, that's another thing. Like, the Vanguard with such a small hand is just really difficult to deal with, and now that the shield is out, that means that you can just start defending a lot easier here.
Yep. That shield pretty much giving an additional 10k of blocking. Pretty much another card in your hand every turn.
And one thing also to consider, because the new Grade 2, Alshnia, is actually out, that means that you can actually counterblast, you were able to bring back the Grade 1. Like, you're able to just keep bringing back cards on board, which is very nice in as the game goes on, because that means that you're able to effectively out-advantage your opponent.
I agree. Constantly being able to bring cards out is important, especially since you're constantly retiring your opponent's side while also reviving your cards. It's very, it's kind of almost like a revival deck touch, kind of almost like a Grand Blue Zorga-esque, but in a Dragon Empire deck. So here we have the boy. So this lets you pretty much rest, kind of what you mentioned about the Nova Grappler. You could rest, search your deck for 1 Zeus card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then on attack, you could choose one of your cards and stand it. So really good, and this really works well with the OT, actually. Overtrigger kind of also works with this, where it stands your rear guards and gives them extra power. Or you choose one of your rear guards and it stands it, and it gives all your front row god cards extra 10k.
Yeah.
So you can essentially have multi-attack.
Yeah, so you get that multi-attack, and not only do you get the multi-attack, but you also get effectively a Hellblast full dive.
Yep, exactly. And here we have the order card coming through as well. Another really interesting card. So you pretty much counterblast if you're a Vanguard or Zeus, and then you give your Vanguard a crits, and all your front region gets 10k. And then you choose a card from hand, and you discard it. If you don't, you choose 2 of your cards in your damage zone, and you put them face down. So if you already have your cards face down, you actually can just get the discard to go off essentially, so you don't discard. So another very cool, interesting skill.
It will it's going to be a counterblast 3 effectively because.
Yep.
There was a lot of face-up damage because
it
took a lot that one turn.
Luckily enough, the deck doesn't use Catablast too heavily, so even though you're doing the Catablast 3 here, like next turn, you can, get the order again, do it again, and then you can just not worry about that second skill as much anymore.
That's true. And the rear guard out right now, that is... which one is?
So you're using shield here.
Oh, that's the Zeus. Okay.
Yep.
A lot of these artworks are very obscured because of how busy the artwork is.
Yeah. It's still the same cards from turn 2. So essentially, they give an additional 5k because the gods are in the front row. So they gain extra power. So they're attacking for 15. Actually, no, attacking for more than 15 because of the order. So yeah, 25.
That's actually really nice. And
yep. So this is attacking for 2 damage because of the order skill here, and then we're standing a unit as well here. So let's see kind of how that works. Already using shield here, so I have to guard this pretty carefully.
Yep. Let's see if Fowler gets any crits. If there's a crit here, which
that is good, making that column now lethal.
It's really big now because that means that Fowler can threaten for lethal here with a crit, and it's big. It's big because that's what 33.
Should be 25 plus the trigger, which is 35 plus the booster, which is 45 actually. So that another heal does go off in this situation. So that's very, very, very good there for Plasma Fish here. Take another damage, get back to 5, and that's another spear out of deck.
Oh, this would have been perfect if Plasma Fish was playing Aditya, not Aditya, the grade 3 that I'm trying to remember the name of it. The one that lets you arm from drop.
I don't remember the name, but I know what card you're talking about. You pretty much was it on place? You just arm essentially. I don't remember the full skill, but yeah, I do know which one you're talking about. Pretty much lets you get those arms back, at least in rotation somewhat. But here we have, did we even see the Soul Blast cost happen here with Buff Sagar?
Can't do it.
Wow, not enough soul. Oh, no, there's no soul.
It's because you need both arms.
Right. And you need to hard draw into the other one. Oh my goodness. That is painful getting both of those in damage like that. But, so there's no crit on this, is there?
Nope, no crit. So this is much easier to deal with, and everything is much smaller right now as well.
Yep. You are very correct. Wow, honestly, this is one of the situations where so Ragnarok is very vulnerable to retire, and not being able to retire is actually really, really, really hindering right now. Like, you need the retiring to get those cards off the board, and if you don't, the Ragnarok is just gonna keep beating face, which is what we've been seeing here for 2 turns now. Yeah,
this hand dump is just going unpunished because of that.
Yep, exactly. But honestly, I think we're. I don't remember. That hand is a little scary though. We know an order is in that hand, and we saw the crit trigger as well through the drive check. So that hand is not too great.
Yeah, 1 crit might just end the game here.
Yes, it's very possible.
Not even, as long as Fowler doesn't hit a heal specifically there, because wow, this is what
it's a PG.
1 to pass.
That's a crit. That was a 1 to pass. Because that was all on Van. That's 2 damage.
Yep.
See what this is? That's a crit.
Oh no.
Ooh, nope. That is game.
Wow. That was quite a comeback by Plasma Fish there, because drive checking those orders really just starts to hurt eventually.
Yeah, exactly. That was kind of where I'm almost wondering if the 2 to pass would have even made a difference there, because I'm assuming what happened was that there just wasn't enough hand to block. Right. And I think that the idea was to guard the Vanguard for a 1 to pass, hoping that there's no trigger, or if it's, a heal or something that isn't a crit would have been fine, and then guard the other one, and then I guess block both. Or it's just a tough situation. That was a tough situation to be in. So for the Ragnarok player,
I think personally, blocking the Vanguard swing was probably not the right call, because no matter what, if a crit was hit, it was probably going to swing for lethal. So I think taking the Vanguard swing, because that was the biggest attack of the turn, and then blocking the rear guards, because any crit will win.
True.
So
you're correct.
More important there.
Yeah, I keep forgetting Trick Moon is like so massive. So Trick Moon being as massive as it is, but since the Vanguard didn't have a crit anyway, it actually would have been the safest call to just take the Vanguard.
Yeah. So there's definitely those opportunities there for like improvement of seeing like, okay, got to figure out sort of, okay, if I can't guard everything, which attack is the biggest that I can afford to take, and then you take that one and then block the rest.
Yep. At least we got a chance to see that brutal, early, aggressive Zeus play. So, as mentioned, I did see that in action, at like my own events and stuff like that. So I was able to kind of witness seeing that full action. Because I remember the first time I faced the Zeus deck, I was like, okay, this can't be that bad. And then I know where it's like 25, 25, 25. Like, wait, what is happening? What is happening right now? So it's a lot. It plays to me personally, it plays similar to Phantom Blaster Dragon because. But that deck also just has really annoying numbers early on, and it's just impossible to block. And Zeus has a similar thing. I think the difference between the two is that Zeus doesn't have the hands to keep kind of doing that, whereas PBO does. I think, but I think they kind of play similarly. But it has that multi-attack stuff too, so it was pretty cool to see. And restanding is nice. Just restanding your rear guards, put all the power on them, do whatever is always a good thing.
Yeah, restanding is really cool. I'm a fan of restanding. I think people who know me are not surprised about that.
Yep. You do like the Novas, and Novas it does like to do that over in V and in Premium. So I thought a lot of restanding happening there.
And I do like the Bruce as well. So
true, Bruce restands.
Yep. So I'm all about that kind of stuff. Like I get to see my card attack more than once in a turn. I'm all for it.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, that's kind of the upside to like multi-attacking decks is being able to just keep getting that rush going of keep attacking. I've never played Novas except like online a few times, so I have never felt it in person, but I do feel it in other decks like Gold Paladin. So, or even even in Overdress. So, now think about, do I play multi-attack then? No, I do.
Flagberg.
I do play flat. Oh, that's right, and that does feel really nice. Those 5 attacks are so. Are you laughing at me?
You forgot about Flagberg.
The one deck that I've been talking about for months, I forgot about it. It's because I've been on that PBO life. Okay, that PBO life has been a little too strong. Those gold Wrens are they're just taking over my line of sight of other decks out there. I just can't think about anything else. But yeah, you're right. Flagberg is a 5 attacking deck, which actually isn't a deck that we've seen at all, surprisingly enough. And that deck is really, I call it the Great 4 killer essentially, or something like that, because it just ramps up so fast, and if you have the pieces, you just kind of just go in, and if you go in and you don't kill them, you're at least shredding hand, and it's just does so much aggression. So a very, very strong deck, and more people have been slowly kind of realizing its power potential, though I think it's kind of in a spot right now where it's sort of just staying in the same spot. Magnolia's gone, but Flagberg hasn't gotten any new cards recently, so it's just kind of in the same place it's been. It's been a good deck since Inlet has dropped, but it hasn't really shifted or moved up or down because there just hasn't really been anything to put in or anything new to add to the decks.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting dynamic as well, of like how with cards getting restricted, sometimes decks will get better just off of relativity, but other decks will get better because of like, okay, my worst matchup is gone.
Yes.
So now I actually have a nice, like, I can actually play into the meta a bit better. Or, for example, maybe a deck that had a good matchup is now worse because the deck that was relevant that had a good matchup against is now no longer there.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree. I have been discussing pretty much how Flagberg and Magnolia are pretty much the same deck. The only difference is Magnolia had better shield over and better kind of recursion going on that Flagberg just didn't really have. So being able to, now that Magnolia kind of lowered in power, Flagberg is like pretty much the go-to deck now. So pretty good stuff. It's nice. It's interesting to see how some stuff shifts that type of style, because honestly I felt like both decks kind of had a similar engine going. Just I think Magnolia was a little bit more consistent.
Yeah.
But looks like we are pretty much done with this round, so we're going to be taking a break here shortly before we start the next round. So thank you guys for watching. We'll just stay tuned, stay right where you're at. We'll be coming right back.
Also, use the hashtag BRO2022. We will be reading that.
Yep, yeah, do that.
Welcome back, everyone, to Bushiroad Rumble Online. And we are actually done with round 6, going into round 7. But before we go back into round 7, we do have our standings. So let's get into that.
Yay, let's go. All right, I guess I'll start us off. We got Plasma Fish. By the way, this is top 16 here. So we got Plasma Fish in 16th. We got G in 15th. We got Yeater in 14th. Wafer Maker 13th place, and then we got Milky in 12th place, Josh in 11th place, Shadow in 10th place, and we got Alex Toyer in 9th.
Those are quite a few players we've seen on stream. But
Yep.
we also have the top 8 right now, or at least the current top 8. We've got Lou in 8th. We've got Army RB in, or Arm Air B, whichever way it's pronounced, in 7th. Big Daddy IO in 6th. Giddy in 5th. Ryuta in 4th. Adrian Barber in 3rd. Kisa in 2nd. And Kagze in 1st. So quite a few players that have already shown up on stream are still doing well, which is great to see. We've got 4 undefeateds right now, which means that we will have exactly 1 undefeated at the end of round 8.
Yeah, that is correct. That is correct. 2 more rounds to go until we kind of see sort of where this is all leading to. But pretty exciting stuff. I'm trying to think about decks that we haven't seen yet or haven't been showcased, but honestly, it's been a very good, like, centered of, we've seen kind of like a little bit of everything this time around. We've seen collab sets, we've seen non-collab sets. There is actually a deck that I don't think has been showcased, and I kind of know why, and that's probably Magnolia.
Yeah. A lot of people after seeing Magnolia get hit are like, oh, that's unfortunate. Well,
Yep.
time to play something else. A lot of those
pretty
people
much.
are like, well, I've got my expensive inlet pulses. Let me just put those in a different deck.
Yeah. A lot of, aside from Zorga, all the rest of the Stoichea decks still do attack 4 times, or at least 4 times, right? So there's plenty of room for inlet to go into those decks, or another format. There's also an option. So you have multiple ways kind of around that. So yeah, it is interesting how different we are, what we're seeing now versus what we were seeing, like, SBRO, like there's just no more Magnolia. That's just gone now. Even back then, people were still kind of trying to make Magnolia work and do its thing, but this time around, there's just none of that, which is crazy to think about because that deck has been pretty much the deck the last couple months. It's like, why would you want to take anything else when you have this crazy deck that just does it all? So, and also Bastion hasn't really, another deck that's also been like showing a lot of stuff. We haven't really seen it too much either.
Yeah, but I mean, speaking of decks, we do actually have our deck for the match right now ready. So let's get into that first one.
Yeah, let's go see that. I'm excited.
Oh, okay. So this is more like the Bruce list I had mentioned earlier in the stream about it being built sort of like a grade 3 Bruce list, but with grade 4 Bruce, where it's running the Hellblast Full Dive, the Leonard, the Marjorie, and the Dober. And this is actually, I'm pretty sure, almost identical. I think like maybe 1 or 2 small differences in terms of like what heals are being run. But other than that, this is pretty much that list, and man, it is a really good list, honestly. Like, you got a lot of good ways to get good aggression going, and because you're not turboing through your deck as quickly, you can actually go for a few extra turns. So normally grade 4 Bruce can only go for like 5 or 6 turns before it decks out. This deck can go for maybe like 1 or 2 extra turns, that can be pretty important.
I agree. I think Bruce not losing its steam is kind of what you want to avoid. You want to make sure you constantly have soul to keep regenerating it, to keep restanding. So I think that plays a key role here. I can't wait to see all this stuff in action with the Megans and pretty much Lenards and all that. But let's go and see what Bruce will be facing this time.
Oh.
This will be good for you.
Yeah, this is an interesting matchup here. Actually, wow, I've never seen people actually play that 1 grade 2 in Barrel Magnus before.
Yes.
I'm trying to remember exactly what it did. I think it was when it attacks, you may
attacks
soul charge
and
one.
soul charges. Yep, and it's not mandatory. It's a may, so you don't have to do it. So it's just another way to just generate soul here. And I think this one also doesn't have persona, so another deck that's pretty much going persona-less, going all for that soul charging mechanic.
Yep, this is no persona. People have realized, okay, why should I run persona when I can just get to my soul charge easier? Because that is one thing. Another interesting thing, no pony. No pony is a factor to consider here, because that means that your soul charging is purely off of what you are hitting in your hand, and then what you're getting with your key aggres. You are not getting to soul charge off of soul charging a pony.
Yeah, that is true, but I guess we'll kind of see they have other mechanics to kind of sort of help with the soul, so we'll see that in action here when we go into our next round. Let's go see our two players, have them face off. Really excited. Dark States against Dark States. Let's see who will out Dark States who.
Yep, let's get into it.
Also, like, while we're getting into this matchup, except for that Gumon, to see if that Gumon will have play.
Gumon is definitely pick as well. It's a bit more counterblast heavy than other options some people run, but it's definitely got some good payoff, because forcing people to guard with 2 cards instead of 1 per thing means that, let's say you have a Keenly Ludley, they can't just PG it, they have to PG it and then some.
Yep, exactly. It kind of adds on a little bit of extra hand rip, which I think is very important. Hand is so key in overdress. You don't really want to have a reason to have to force out more cards from hand, and sometimes that will finish off the game.
Oh, wow.
We have a no pass?
Yeah, I think this is smart. So Adrian is going for a play of trying to stay at low damage here, so that you can afford to take the Barrel Magnus grade 3 turns hits a little bit easier, which personally that's also sort of how I play Bruce as well. And the way that Adrian's playing this as well is probably going to go for a try to bring Ryuta to his own pace. One thing to consider as well is that because Adrian is actually running, or because Adrian currently is going first, that means that you can just, if you want, go for a slower paced game. Doesn't seem that that's what he's going for, but if you are really desperate for it, you can just, for example, pass on turn 3 if Ryuta doesn't call any rear guards out, or just swing at rear, because Barrel Magnus with 2 damage has a lot more potential than Barrel Magnus with 1 damage, because that 2 damage allows you to use Kiegra's skill in addition to Pandemonium Tactics.
Yes, that is very true. I guess the goal here is to maybe rush down and kill before Barrel Magnus has too many turns with aggro, with 10k and crits. Whoa. So I think that is a crit you're seeing here, putting Barrel Magnus to 3 damage here. So that's very good, kind of that early aggression. Losing that Pandemonium Tactics is also good. Like, not seeing Pandemonium Tactics does slow down Barrel Magnus quite a bit here. Yeah. So,
because Pandemonium Tactics, while a very good card, it's very crucial to the deck that you see it either soul charging it or by just drawing it after, like, using some draw pieces, for example. Another thing as well is that because Ryuta is going second, Adrian can afford to just rush a little bit. And if you rush and get Barrel Magnus to 5 before your grade 4 turn, you're threatening quite a bit. Oh.
Yeah. Wow. Exactly. I agree with that, because, like, honestly, Bruce just gets stronger once you get to Final Rush, and the turn just gets, like, the more damage you have, the easier it is for Bruce player to kill. So I think I'll just kind of constantly applying pressure here is exactly what you want to do, because Barrel Magnus usually can't guard because they need all their pieces anyway. So you might as well just try and just keep pushing here. Yeah,
and I completely agree. And also one thing to consider as well, Adrian had called out the Leonard because he doesn't care about losing it in this matchup, because Barrel Magnus does not build columns.
Yep.
So that card has kind of served its purpose already. And in fact, if Leonard had hit here, would have been able to call stuff out off of Leonard's on hit.
Oh
no.
And that was a 2 to pass too. Wow.
Yeah, you just need a crit here and okay. No
Going
crit.
To 5 here.
But yeah, now this is terrifying for Ryuta. Ryuta's at 5 damage and dealing with a plus 10k next turn if there is a next turn, because honestly, Barrel Magnus is one of those very explosive decks. You can just win if you, like, for example, hit a crit on your Vanguard and they no-guard it.
Yes.
It's taking you to 4.
Honestly, depending, I think this is kind of like a you have to kill here or hope to heal back down. But honestly, with a Gumon and Bear Magnus having the 15 soul, you could easily turn the game around here. But it'll be a little tough, but you could do it. Bear Magnus can sweep through really fast. Surprising enough, the numbers get big, and you're attacking 5 times, and you have that crit that you're discussing. Another crit on the Vanguard could like easily finish games because 5 attacks with all those magic numbers is no joke.
Yeah. I mean, because, yeah, these are both decks that get a lot of attacks. Like, compared to, let's say, Thagria, for example, which is a 4-attack deck. Orphist, which until turn 4 is a 4-attack deck at most.
Yep.
This, like, being able to just right out the gate hitting 5 attacks on turn 3 is a lot stronger than a lot of people give credit for.
Exactly. We just see the Gumon go into Soul here off of the Electro Spartan on right skill, so I guess no Gumon. We just saw another one also get Soul Charged, so there won't be that guard restrict. That is 2 heals getting Soul Charged there. That is, I was thinking like a way out is to honestly heal you back down to 3, but we just lost 2 more heals, and here we have Pendulum Tactics also being played. The OT is gone. Another heal gone just like that too. That is 4 potential heals that could have happened there, but you know you just got to Soul Charge because you want to get that 15 soul here. So it's just it is what it is. But we are getting some pretty big columns here, starting with the smallest one.
Yeah, you could just intercept with the Leonard here because that 5k block.
Take this one.
Because there's no Gomon, you can just perfect guard the Vanguard. If you take this, perfect guard the Vanguard, you don't have to worry about anything. Because you'll only be at 2 damage, and all you have to do then is block 1 more attack.
Exactly. That's a defense there, which will make it a little bit easier to guard. But I kind of almost wondering if there was a reason to go for the 15 soul. I guess you kind of had to since you wanted to push as fast as possible. But I'm wondering if committing too much like almost puts you in a bad position here. But hard to say.
The issue here is that Barrel Magnus doesn't really do much without getting to the 15 soul. Like, sure, you can do stuff without the 15 soul. Like, you can still draw and get a crit, but, like, oh, so scary. You have plus 10
it's
in
just
the
3
crit.
attacks. Yeah.
Yeah. And, oh, that's interesting. Going for that instead of, like, say, a
The Great
Kiagra.
Two.
Yeah, because Kiagra would have still given the power, and it would have made the Vanguard a little bit more threatening. Being 28 instead of 23 is very nice.
Did we see a Kiagra?
That's true. I don't think he did see a Kiagra.
I saw a lot of Gumons, a lot of triggers, and
This is
that's
no-pass.
Yep, that's using the new heals here. Actually seeing the new heals in action. We don't see this too often.
But I mean, it's coming into play right here, and it's doing its job very well. Doing a no pass because we've already seen the crit check or the over trigger checked.
Yep.
And that's probably the worst set of drive checks you could get outside of just double pandemonium tactics, because that means very low shield value and at 5 damage and only 1 heal left in the deck at most, and OT is already out. Oh no! Nothing can hit.
Double defense. Yep. This is quite the turnaround. Honestly, we went from this maybe getting a turnaround to kind of being in a tough situation as the Bear Magnus player right now, going into the grade 4. The grade 4, so this new grade 4 essentially lets you not only attack multiple times, but also restand the Vanguard and getting some pretty good numbers here. Now we're seeing also the full dive, I believe it's called, going into action here, getting the 10k front, a double Marjorie. Oh no, Megan and Marjorie. Sorry, they look a little similar here.
This is a terrifying turn right now. Marjorie and Megan together, because that means not only do you get to build up that advantage off of Marjorie, but you also get to just build up your your power from Megan. Oh no, this is 30 already. And the Vanguard's 30. The Vanguard's 33 with a crit.
Yep.
Because
it has that over trigger. Yeah, this is quite. You don't see Bruce very often apply this much pressure because it's like quote unquote the turn 4 deck.
Yeah.
But we are seeing quite an aggressive Bruce style going on here.
For sure. And I think one of the things as well is normally you'll see a Bruce player try and bring the opponent to their pace, but I think Adrian realized, okay, this guy's Barrel Magnus list is a lot less defensive and it can't really do much in terms of, like, it's calling stuff down that might rush, but I don't really care. So it just kind of goes, okay, let me just rush you and try and force cards out of your hand, or just try and win it this turn. Because I know a lot of the time people will try and damage deny Barrow Magnus, because it's like, okay, if you can't hit your 15, which it's a lot harder to hit the 15 without that,
Yep.
I don't really mind. Oh no, is that 3 damage? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh
I
my.
think that's game right there. Double resetting Vanguard with crit at 33k is quite a lot to take, and when you're at 5 damage. So honestly, that was getting pushed that early is kind of what set the game there, because Bruce on grade 4 is just so aggressive, and
Yeah.
that's why a lot of people run like those crazy builds where they're more focused on grade 4, because the grade 4 turn is like literally the kill or die turn. Like you either killed on that turn or you die as a Bruce player, right? So you kind of have to. But what we saw there was that early ramp up of those crits and the hitting the OT kind of pushed the situation where like you're at a situation where you can't guard anything. Like I mean, like you can't take a single damage. Like you have to guard everything. And being a Baramatics player, which isn't super big on a hand to begin with, you're kind of put in a very tight corner, and your only out is really healing. And seeing those 4 heals go in, well, one of them was OT, but it counts as a heal. But going all those heals going in was just like, oh.
Yeah, it's like, oh
oh
no,
boy.
my outs are gone.
Yeah, that was that was one of the situations, one of the few rare situations where you see a Bruce match kind of finish pretty quickly, honestly,
Yeah.
because normally Bruce doesn't ramp up that fast, but you know, hitting triggers is a way to ramp it up pretty quickly, and its win con is really strong. Having a double Vanguard swing, even with one drive check, is still really good.
Yeah, I mean, like, the deck is good. Like, I think people underrate the deck because it's not, like, as oppressive as it was during set 2. But enough about Bruce. We actually also have a match right now, just because of how quickly that one ended, between Kyrie and Nirvana.
The grade 4 against grade 4 here.
Wow, but they're already both at high damage as well.
Yeah, we are seeing that here. And it looks like it is Kyrie's play going into Calfee, a card that says on place you pretty much just get power, like a 10k power, and then Kyrie gives additional power because Kyrie's skill says anytime you call something, it gets additional power. We're going for the full onslaught here. Might as well. I think this is the last turn going here. You kind of have to try and kill, and that's what we're gonna do here. And Kyrie does bounce cards and recall stuff out. I don't know how good the soul is or what the last couple cards are in hand here, so we'll kind of see if we can multi-attack top of the multi-attack with the dog that Kyrie has, along with a couple other things. But we are going for full Irene's skill coming up here, putting a card either on top or bottom, putting out top, probably a trigger in that case. So we have a very aggressive triple drive here.
One thing to consider as well is that Nirvana does have Urger on the board, and because Urger is overdressed, it's a 20k shield. That's pretty good, because that means you get like a free block against one thing without using your hand, which helps a lot.
Yes, I agree. But we're about to see kind of sort of. I can't tell if I assume the Nirvana player is at 4 damage, so they can at least take 1, I believe here.
Yes.
So, got room for 1.
And with that hand size, that's also looking pretty healthy as well. So you can afford to block this and the Vanguard, and then try and just intercept to block the last thing on the board.
Yeah, it depends. So we're gonna have 2 cards coming out. It depends on if the dog is in hand, because the dog will actually reset a booster as well, which will make it a little bit harder to block some of these numbers.
Oh, wait, was that enough?
I guess they're double checking.
Yeah,
Here right
just
now.
saying, okay, this is 20k shield. This should be enough.
20k. So Calfee is 10, 20, 25.
Interesting.
So I think she's at 10k on her own, and then she gets 10 plus plus her own skill, and then 5 off of Kyrie. So yeah, she was 25.
Okay. And yeah, this is the Kyrie swing. May have to just bank it on banking it. Oh, is that a crit or a draw?
It's a draw. It's a draw trigger.
Okay.
So I think that's why maybe they were thinking on whether they should leave it on top or not, because at this point you kind of want to see crits.
Yeah.
And there's the mouse. Oh, the mouse is a really good setup too, but we've already reset up everything. So honestly, here it's just guarding these 2, and then and it should be fine.
Yeah, and because you have the Urger, you can just intercept as well.
Yeah, you are correct. You are correct. I always kind of forget about the Urger shield that you brought it up here. I think that's a really good thing to bring up because Overdress has issues with shield as it is, and having cards like that definitely help dealing with numbers like this.
Yeah, because I remember people sort of like initially started trying with Urger, just to see, okay, this has good shield value. Then people started cutting it, and then they started putting it back in. It's very interesting to see how the Overdress deck has like changed over time, even with the card pool not changing very much. It's just like people realizing, okay, this actually works pretty well, or oh, that doesn't work quite as well. Like I remember people were running like the prayer build in Nirvana, and then it's like, it feels a little, like it feels good on paper, but not as good in practice.
Yep.
And now it's sort of changed a lot, because it's like, okay, let's sort of go back to Old Faithful.
Yep, exactly. Luckily enough, I do feel, as long as there are 4 there, I do feel some of these numbers aren't too high, but it depends. Those are 2 cards in hand, but just one more block here, so I think Kelpie is all that's left. And Kelpie shouldn't be swinging for too big, unless the trigger is on it, so she's 35 right now. Unless, was that the last damage? I'm a little confused.
Was it?
I can't tell. That's the thing. I couldn't tell earlier if that was the last damage or not.
Huh?
But
I can't tell.
it looks like 5 to me. But it did. I guess that was it. Yep, that was game. So that must have been the 6 damage we just couldn't see. I was kind of wondering. I couldn't tell if they were at 5 or if the Nirvana player was at 4 or not. So.
Yeah. Well, that sort of happens, I guess. Maybe it was like obscured from like just from the overlay and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like maybe it was visible, but like,
yeah, it was probably more visible on the actual platform, but we just couldn't see it because of moving tables quickly. But regardless, yeah, that was Kyrie doing Kyrie things. So Kyrie has a good little multi-attacking type of skill there, and you kind of just keep going, and you are able to ramp up numbers pretty easily and make magic numbers pretty fast. Calfee being one of them. Calfee is actually kind of a weird one to me. I love Calfee, but also don't, because if I'm not mistaken, she has a 10k base power, which means that she's 25 on Kyrie, and that is not a magic number. Whereas if you were to run the mouse that we saw in the drive check, she says counterblast, put something into soul, get 10k, and she's a 13k base. Now we have a 28k attacker, which is a magic number. And do you think this kind of stuff like that can make a big difference here? Maybe going into another match here, so brace yourself, guys. We'll see here in a second what's happening. These matches are going by so fast. And it looks like we got an interesting one. We got a very, very interesting one. If we do actually go into this one, I'm actually really excited, as it's 2 very protagonist-esque type of ones. So,
yeah, I'm excited for this. This is a throwback of a matchup.
This is a real throwback.
This is a 2013 matchup right here.
Ooh, I'm feeling this one already.
Yeah.
I'm like getting I'm okay. But we're holding until we find out. So in the meantime, I going back. I'm actually thinking now we haven't seen too many Kyrie decks kind of come through. I'm actually one of the few people, though I do believe the deck is strong. I'm one of those few people that doesn't feel. I don't feel the power as much as like I guess other people feel the power, because I feel like the deck takes so long. Like it has that early kind of quote unquote rush, but so do other decks, and I feel like it takes some time to kind of ramp up. But people seem to really like it. They claim it to be like a literal tier 1 deck. So
yeah, I feel that. Like some people say, oh, Kyrie must be the best deck now. Personally, I don't know about it being the best deck. I think it's good, but like I don't know. Sometimes it feels like everything either goes right or everything goes wrong.
Yep, and that's personally my issue with it too. I feel like if you don't see Melty, you just do nothing turn after turn after turn. If you don't see a grade 4, you're kind of a little stuck. And because of that, I feel Kyrie kind of, I guess, lacks a little bit. But I don't know. I test the deck and I don't see the but people really like it. I will say it's a very pretty deck, and it is fun to play, and it does have that styling of the bouncing stuff, so it's just overall a overall good deck to just take, just because of how much it draws through. And I think Eileen just really carries. We saw that card kind of in action there for a second. You can look at top card, put it at top or bottom, so essentially you're cycling through your deck faster, and opening up that kind of card with Melty just pretty much secures you game, because you just keep doing stuff.
Yeah, I think it's got like you said, like a lot of those different plays. Melty, I think, is just like such a good card.
Yep.
Just in general.
Counterblast, draw, call, or call, draw.
What? It's a mini Alden.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And then on top of that, like you also get your on-place abilities to go off. You can make some cool columns with it. Like there's just so many little things that, and then you bounce it all back too with Kyrie's skill. It's like call it all back out, bring it all back to hand, extra draw,
Yep.
plussing. Like, what can go wrong?
Yeah, and the fact that it's like on place call, because if I remember correctly, it's not only during the main phase. So that means you can call it out, call something out from Melty's skill, and you get back extra attacks. You get 5 attacks in your turn, and you get to get more cards. Pretty strong.
Yep, exactly. And plus, you can make some magic numbers even with like
Mhm.
some of the earlier stuff that you call out, or have that little early rush that you have there. So pretty exciting stuff.
But it does look like we are getting
Are
into
we
the
going
match
in?
that-
Are we going in? Oh, yes. We got the PBO versus the Overlord. Overlord being a deck that you don't see very often. This deck has a very weird survival rate. It just doesn't die.
Yeah, the strangest thing is that these players are. Let me check their records.
At low damage? Actually, the PBO player looks like they're at 1 damage. Am I seeing that correctly?
Yes, 1 damage.
Is that an over trigger? I can't tell. No, it's a crit, I think.
That is a crit.
Okay, just making sure. I couldn't tell off of the angle there, but yes. So, for those of you who may not know how Overlord works, essentially Overlord attacks with rear guard and then restands and attacks with Vanguard. And essentially you have like these weird things where you can't guard it in certain ways, and the numbers kind of rack up too. And it just does these little stuff where it just keeps going, and you kind of keep getting you go through your deck really fast. Some situations. It's actually just a strangely not a bad deck, I would say is the best way to put it, but it doesn't have like almost not many people really play this deck too much.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's sort of got a very strange playstyle, and because it's a deck that can't cheat the original encounter into the soul,
Yep.
like PBO can, it is a bit slower than, because you can't necessarily, well, not only that, but your persona rides are kind of not happening.
Exactly. You are correct about that. Here we have yet another drive check happening since you're not losing drive checks here, so that's what's going on. And yes, PBO is also here. I absolutely love this card. I'm really excited to see when we see the actions going on PBO's side. Though they don't have a board. Kind of wondering what happened there. Normally PBO is loaded like with a board. So
Yeah, that's a very... Whoa.
then that's an over trigger. That's one way to shut down a turn.
Well then. Well, that happened, and
So
I mean,
now
5 cards.
Yep. So PPO is costless, is what I like to call it. You can do whatever you want every single turn, turn after turn after turn, with absolutely no counterblast. So you do have to keep retiring, but as long as you're drawing cards, which you do through drive check, you can essentially just keep doing the same thing over and over again. So you really don't need much. So that's why even though our PPO player is at 1 counterblast here, he doesn't. They don't even necessarily need it. All you use the counterblast on is like early blaster dark and like Nemain or something. And here we have coming out. They run the Angel too. So this is the Grade 3 PBO. Sadly, they don't have one in Soul, so they can't get the critical off here. And they're running the Grade 1. I'm actually kind of I guess they couldn't call it so the Grade 1. Oh, that's another OT. Okay. Question mark.
That's
sure.
hilarious.
So it looks like. What?
Skill here? Because like
no, I mean honestly, you could just to get the blaster dark and maybe attack into the rear guards, but there really is no reason to.
Oh no! I just realized you can't use Overlords, or you can't use the end skill here because it costs a counterblast.
You're right.
You don't have any face-up damage.
Another vanilla turn. Here we go. So it looks like this is a very interesting match.
There's no countercharge in this deck either.
There is. There's the Grade 1 counter charges. There's 2 different counter charges. I don't know about this deck specifically, but there are counter charges that you can run. But maybe this deck in specific doesn't run it. Let me double check.
I don't think I see any countercharge in this build.
Wait.
No, Burning Horn does. Burning Horn, but it's no, but that's only after counterblast. So yeah, no, there's no countercharge in this.
Yep, you are indeed correct. You are correct. There's a little bit. You kind of search in the counter charge. There's also I think there's the grade 1. I don't remember the name of the counter charges, but they're not running in this list specifically. So no counter charging here. Just straight up vanilla swinging. Of course, I'm assuming the PBO player will just take the damage. They kind of want to keep their hand and potentially have units to do stuff with here. Maybe find a drilling angel, which I think we saw in drive check, which would be perfect here, because you want to get that crit going. That's another little defense there. Why not?
Yeah,
We're just playing the defense game today.
And I mean, at least your rear guard column is gigantic because of Nahalem.
Yeah, this is very true. That attack there isn't too small. Still gotta guard it, or you can just choose to take it here at this point. You can just savor your hand, do some funny stuff, or guard it. Yep, that works too. So either way, you're looking pretty okay. So now we'll maybe actually have a PBO turn. Now with you can have 2 potential attackers on both sides, and then have the retire to call it Blaster Dark. So let's see how this goes. Maybe a Persona ride. That would
very
be good
funny
too.
though that both of these players hit defensive overtrigger literally exactly right after each other.
Yup, pretty much both shutting down each other's turns. So it's I shut down a turn. Well, guess what? I shut down a turn too. So
You skipped my turn, I'll skip yours.
yeah, pretty
Calling it
much.
even.
They're just farming. I will say something. Overlord can actually deck out really fast, and
Yeah.
it looks like this game is going so slow that it might actually lead to that.
Yeah, that's very true. Because I mean, the deck drive checks 4 times in a turn, just like
Drilling
Grade
Angel.
4 Bruce.
That is Drilling Angel. Oh, beautiful. Do they have a PBO? I was actually almost thinking and wondering if they were going to call the Drilling Angel over the PBO in order to get the PBO into Soul, but I wasn't sure if there was one in Drop. Is there one in Drop? Is that a PBO? No, that was not a PBO. That was the grade 1 that says on place discard a card. Look at top 2 and call them. So that was not the PBO. I don't know if the crit matters too much. I can't tell how much damage Trick is at. I can't tell if it's 2 or 3, but I do think the crit kind of applies extra pressure and shreds cards out of hand. But on the other hand, you do want the attacker. You do want a attacker here. So maybe the goal was, hey, I want to attack 4 times this turn and not 3.
I think that's probably the goal here because you want to push out some hand, and you want to apply some pressure at least.
Yep. Exactly.
Even doing damage is nice.
Yeah, but this is quite a game.
Yeah, this is a very silly, a little zany, quite goofy.
Yeah, indeed. I think it took the PBO player quite a bit to find those grade 1s because we're only seeing them now, and normally those grade 1s are at most ideal on turn 1 to turn 3 because that's when they apply the most pressure. I'm actually surprised they retired the 2 and the 1 there because it would have made more sense to retire the PBO side because not only that, but you have an interceptor on the board.
Yeah.
They could have double interceptors. Both from Blaster Dark and Drilling Angel, and also keeping the PBO in the drop can, secure it for future Drilling Angels. So here, the Vanguard's attacking, does have the extra 10k, and the Blaster Dark coming out also through that skill, also getting extra 10k. Running Lag Reel, another interesting card to add on to apply extra pressure. Here we have another swing.
Honestly, a nice choice because you can retire, or you can rest 2 things that you're already going to retire anyways.
Yep. It works really well with that grade 1 that we saw go into Soul, which pretty much floods your board.
And the deck doesn't really use Counterblast anyway, so
Exactly.
it's a nice option to be able to go, okay, I have a way to use my Counterblast now to punish my opponents for actually trying to hit me.
Yeah, exactly. I'm noticing this deck actually runs a lot of toolboxy type of cards. I'm noticing a lot of variations. There's quite a lot going on in here. We got the Ezrod, and just a bunch of useful cards, I guess they could just use to push out game.
This will be interesting though, because we're still getting our restands, which means that the general advantage that Overlord gets here is very nice.
Yeah, because you don't have to discard cards anymore.
Yeah.
So you could just keep going, and this is truly the Kai versus Ren matchup here.
It really is.
We really are going back in time. 2013, where are you at?
Yeah, 9 years ago. Wow.
And here we are. Some things don't change, as people say.
That's true.
So I do think overall, this is because Overlord already has this condition, and the restand is just going to keep happening. We're going to keep seeing kind of the same thing over and over again happen.
Ooh, something I didn't even consider. Because the end hit, bar gets power as well. So that means that column is pretty big. It's 28 on its own. So that means that's a 20k block. Just
a nice magic number.
Without a trigger.
Yep. I wonder how back and forth this is going to go, because this looks like it's going to be going back and forth for a little bit.
Blanks.
Yep,
oh
yep. But I think overall, because of the constant drawing that I feel like Overlord does, the hand is just looking a lot nicer. I'm almost wondering if it's worth using Blaster Dark skill to keep retiring something, because you kind of want to stop all that attacking that keeps happening.
Yeah,
so we
another
have
thing to
intercept.
consider is, whoa, that hand on the Phantom Blaster Overlord side, looking not very good.
Nope, not at all. And so I'm almost wondering if it would have been worth to retire that grade 1 at the back to kind of push for some retire to force out the Overlord player to have to call more cards from hand. Because I think what's happening here is the Phantom Blaster player keeps calling cards out because they have to keep retiring. Meanwhile, the Overlord player doesn't have to call anything; they just have to start swinging. So because of that, the tempo is like very not balanced, and it's very much on the Overlord side. But as you can see here, we had a little deck count there. The deck is getting pretty small, and there's no way to really get it back, so you just have to hope you don't deck out.
Yeah, and you can't afford to take damage here either if your deck's small as well, so we might not see any more restands.
Yep, exactly. So as long as I think there's some pressure applied here, calling out sorry, we do have Laguio. Oh, calling out the getting pretty much the whole setup here, resting some of these rear guards here, going for the full drive check scenario. Might as well try and go for game here.
Yeah, like this is the opportunity here where you
How much deck do we have? Is that 4 or 5 cards? No, that's
no.
that's not too bad.
Yeah, that's
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, 7 cards. So, and we did see a Persona ride. So if Trickbow wanted to, he could go for just a Persona ride into we could see a Persona ride into just big numbers, which could probably seal the game.
I agree that there is no hand, so the only hand that the PPO player will have will be the drive check. And I don't think that'll be enough to deal with those numbers.
Yeah, unless you hit like something crazy like double PG, you can't really block much if there's a Persona ride. Oh,
something that I just realized, there is no Nemain in this PPO deck. That's actually pretty wild. I actually kind of understand this. I do feel Nemain sometimes clutters, but she also helps you draw. And it's kind of like an up and down card. Like, she's only a 10k attacker. And sometimes the Counterblast with the double draw, is it worth it? And sometimes it makes you want to decide, like, maybe I should run something else in her spot. But overall, it's kind of a hard choice. But I can kind of understand the reason to want to take Nemain out.
Mm-hmm. I completely understand.
Yeah, wondering kind of how to guard here, because we have the regular with the drive checks, and then we'll have the other PPO attacking, and then Vanguard, and then we'll have a Blaster Dart coming out.
Oh, this is a lot of shield, actually.
Yeah, because of the drop zone. Such a funny card. Always coming into play. It's just such a generic and useful card that you can just throw it into any Dragon Empire deck, and it just works.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's like what? It gets like 15k shield, right?
It becomes a 15k shield. Oh, that would help.
What was that?
A draw trigger.
Useful. That helps. Useful. Putting the power over to PBO or other PBO.
Unfortunately,
and a Persona.
Have to discard it all because you didn't rest anything with Lagrel.
Yeah, going for the all-in here, I guess. Getting Blaster Dark out. Interesting. Kind of wondering, again, like, the Blaster Dark retires, which is very useful sometimes, as it constantly applies pressure. Mm-hmm.
Not using it because I'm pretty sure wants to use the Soul Crits ability to give that Phantom Blaster +2 to make it hit for one more stage because boosted by an 8K means that with the +2 means it's effectively +10.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. I can agree and disagree because it makes the Vanguard swing kind of awkward. But yeah, that extra 2K can make some magic numbers happen. But it looks like not opting to use the skill here, keeping it on the board maybe for potential other retire.
This makes blocking this last attack, because of this defensive trigger, this makes blocking it much easier.
Yeah.
Because it's only, what, effectively... Yeah, that's enough.
Yep, exactly. Going back over to the Overlord side of things, I don't think they can restand 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards. Actually, that could restand.
You can, but...
It'll be your last turn.
You would not be able to Persona Ride either.
Yeah, that is correct.
You have to consider as well, like, okay, do I want to Persona Ride or do I want to... Because you can call a booster here and make it so everything can hit through a defensive trigger or a defensive heal.
I think knowing the hands that JoJo has, you can honestly Persona and end here. But you can also choose to go for the double attack. Like, either way, I think it's fine because the numbers are just so... The numbers are... we know the hand, right? So, like, there's no way you can guard 3 attacks. Or 4 attacks in this case, so...
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's a pretty healthy soul. You can afford to use... I think he did use Nahalim's skill. Either he did or he can right here. Because Nahalim makes it so that your columns are just nicer. Your Vanguard's harder to block. Oh!
Yep.
Oh.
Yep, that's another thing to do.
Pretty beefy right now.
Yep, to make the Vanguard even bigger, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's now a 20k attacking Vanguard. Here we go again. Now it's a 38k attacking Vanguard.
Yeah.
It's a big boy. And now we're bringing out the booster too. Oh, sorry, It's 5k. I thought that was the other one that gives 10k. So this is the 5k one, so sorry. It is now a 28k attacking Vanguard. And we have the Eugene card in the back applying even extra power.
Yep. This means that the Vanguard will be really big on the second swing as well.
That's crits.
Yep.
So assuming that was a no guard there. That's another crits. Ooh, that is triple. Quadruple, actually.
Yeah. It's a lot of damage right there.
That's a heal?
Need 2 more, though.
Oh?
And there's already one out.
Oh? Okay.
No.
I was like, can the miracle happen? And that does conclude our Kai and Ren game here that we got a chance to see. It's nice to be able to see that the kind of the lesser commonly played decks, I guess. PBO is a little bit more played now, but you know, Overlord is definitely very underrepresented. So it's nice to actually see that deck in action.
Yeah, and I mean, it was really interesting to see that, like, because that player was 4-2, now 5-2. Being X2 in the later rounds with a deck that a lot of people don't really consider, like, oh, this is something I should prepare for, is very interesting, honestly.
Yep. That was honestly, I don't know what the PBO player could have done better there to kind of help themselves, because like I mentioned that the constant 2 retire means you're minusing 2 essentially every turn. So you just, like, unless you can kind of tempo it out better, maybe retire or do something, I feel like there just wasn't enough there. Meanwhile, the Overlord player is like, I attack, I restand, I attack, I restand. Like, you're not really losing card value. You're kind of like staying even, whereas the PBO player did not have that going for them at all.
Yeah.
But yeah. That was we went through 3 matches, so it's very, very cool. We had a very interesting round there. You guys got a chance to see quite a lot going on, but we're gonna go ahead and take a break here before the final round, where we'll be coming back with, I believe we'll be coming back with everyone, including Toku. So we'll see how that's going. So see you guys soon. Welcome back to Bushiroad Rumble Online 2022. We are here with the Cardfight Vanguard Overdressed Standard format. How are you guys feeling? We have gone through quite a few rounds, and we're going into our last round here. Toku, with the... How do you feel?
Honestly, that last game, I'm kind of upset that I wasn't on with you guys to commentate it, but like, straight out of the anime, Kai versus Ren. And actually, spoilers but not spoilers, flipping the results of the anime, and instead of Kai losing, Kai getting the win with his signature double crit. What a way to end it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, like, not only that, the episode that had that, at least in Japan, aired over 10 years ago. So
10th anniversary, baby. That's what we're talking about. Now, we do have the standings for you as we get into the last round of Swiss for today's tournament of Bushiroad Rumble Online 2022. Let's bring up our top 16, starting with the 16th. Take it away, Peter.
All right. In 16th right now, we've got Ares. In 15th, we've got Demios. In 14th, we've got the Gumi Guy. In 13th, we've got Donovan TX8. In 12th, we've got G, President of the World. In 11th, we've got Terathrox. In 10th, we've got Yusha. And in 9th, we've got Kentacore. And a reminder, these are all the X1s and the next page of them. So one X1 will not make it to top 8.
No pressure.
Take it to the top 8. Orange?
Yep. Let's go see that. So in 8th place, we have the Derek Dow, which actually, we haven't seen this name pop up at all today, so now we are seeing it here. In 7th place, we got Ryu. In 6th, we got Lu. 5th, we got Big Daddy-O. 4th, we got Giddy. 3rd, we got Kisa. 2nd, we got Adrian Barber. In 1st place, we got Kaze. So very, very interesting top 16 cut. Very excited to see how this pretty much plays out once we hit top 8. So I'm really excited.
I'm actually very excited as well. So good to see. We do have 2 undefeateds going into our final round of Swiss here. We do know that Kogze is on that Gravidia World and Adrian is on that very, very, how do I say, almost traditional Bruce list. But we're also seeing like a lot of these like very familiar names all the way back from like the previous week. So very excited to see what comes out after this 8th round of Swiss.
Yep.
This is
So it looks
really
like,
exciting.
I was gonna say, it looks like we got the decks ready, so we can go into the deck review for the next and last round.
Ooh, it's
Got-
Adrian
Yep.
again.
All right, so I'm predicting it's going to be Adrian Barber versus Kogze. So as we said, Adrian Barber on that Bruce list. We've got the Final Rush supports, highlights to Megan and Marjorie. Those are going to be the big role players being able to attack for strong numbers by themselves. But cannot forget Leonard. Similar to what we saw. Actually, I wonder how Leonard will fare in the matchup against the Gravidia deck. I want to see maybe it gets more value as Gravidia does put up more of a board. Peter, give me your thoughts.
I think this build is honestly like really creative. Like people who have been playing this deck, like have been very successful. I mean, not only this, but like in a third-party tournament last week, we had another undefeated Bruce that was using pretty much the exact same list, showing yeah, Bruce is pretty good. Just took a while for people to figure out how to use it. And honestly, I respect that. I love Bruce. I actually am about to change my deck to this build. I just need the Megans. I only have one Megan right now.
I guess you could say Bruce is your daddy. Now let's go ahead and see what deck 2 will be that Adrian will be playing against. We all know it. It's going to be Kogze on the Gravidia World. Similarly, we do have the Grade 1 and Grade 2 ride line from the Orphis line being able to grab us that Shadow Token order. And once we get into Gravidia and Orlinger, we start farming up our Meteors that we can go for that very nice board wipe, but also those double triggers that we all so know and love. Is it finally in round 8 that we get to see double OT? Oranges, what's your thoughts on the deck list so far?
I think it's pretty good. They are running the Grade 1 from the Crystal Collection here to kind of help with some. I believe it's an on hit. Once you draw a card, it kind of just like put a meteor into the meteor zone, if I'm not mistaken. But kind of lets you just cycle through your deck a little bit more. I like the Shurgo. It's a beat stick on top of also helping you not deck out. So overall, I think this deck has pretty much what you need to have in a world built to sort of apply pressure, but also just keep pushing and tempoing out with the meteors. So I'm pretty excited, and I do hear that the players are ready. So we're going to be going into the rounds. So let's go see how that goes. So this is the final round.
This is the final round. I'm very excited. I have my own biases. I'm rooting for Kogze, but what do you guys think will happen? What gives the upper hand?
Well,
personally, but you can go, Peter.
Oh well, Bruce and Gravidia in general, at least in set 3. The matchup was Gravidia favored because Gravidia was the faster deck. And that hasn't really changed so far in this one. It's going to be a lot more of a damage denial game for Adrian, probably. What are your thoughts on this, Orange?
I agree wholeheartedly. I honestly think that because it ramps up faster, because it is a grade 3 focused deck, I think just being able to utilize that to your advantage is good. Like on grade 3, you can always start applying pressure, always start pushing, and some even play, the rush variant, which we do have here with the orders. So I do think that Gravidia has the upper hand. Also, just board wiping is just really useful. So you have to be kind of very cautious how you're going to call your stuff out. And I think Gravidia being able to draw through and deal with the grade 4 turn will be enough for Gravidia to win in this case.
On that topic, we do see that Cogsay was able to go first, and Bruce being a deck that does have to kind of have that slow startup on that initial grade 3 turn, Cogsay going to be able to capitalize on that free turn that Adrian Barber presents, getting that extra Nordlinger crits, but Adrian Barber putting on that very strong offensive pressure there. Going to immediately discard the Meteor for the ride into the grade 2 Kubizla. And we're going to go ahead and get that order, getting that extra power, and put up some pressure of our own.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with Adrian's play here, because that allowed for Cogsay to be able to get some early aggression going because he swung at all. And so being able to delay that by just a turn also would have forced Cogsay to have to call out or use the order. Oh,
okay, gets a big crit there. And then, just as we had shown off in the deck review, Gravidia Peters being able to recycle a Meteor from the drop zone to the deck. Now, unfortunately, only putting one card back, so we don't get that extra draw. But that Shadow Token is going to be very big. Has that extra crit as well. Going to be able to push Barber to a very quick 2 damage there. But, hard guarding. I like it.
And with this, honestly, you can just swing rear if you really feel like it. Because now that there's that Shadow Army token out on the board right now, it's giving a front row rear guard that, because there's no face-up damage right now, you can just swing at that rear guard, prevent them from going for any board retire, honestly. Oh.
Ooh, calling down the Derek as well, though. It looks like going Derek to Van, choosing to take the damage here, to not get damage tonight going into a grade 3 turn. And luckily the Shadow Token being 15k is a very hard body to attack into. So forcing the Vanguard to swing here to have being able to maybe check a trigger to get into the Shadow Token power.
Oh, it was a thing about the numbers from last turn. About how that was not enough.
Oh, I see. Well, I guess while they figure that out,
needing to give an extra 5.
Yeah, he's just correcting it.
Oh, okay. They're dropping an extra 5 to kind of help that shield.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. But in the meantime, so I am kind of interested why the aggression here off of Bruce. Though it seems a little unless the hand is just holding all normal units, it does sound a little scary to just go ahead and just keep calling units, knowing that they're going to get retired. Especially since you kind of need them to restand stuff on grade 4 Bruce.
And not only that, but like calling out, swinging at Vanguard as well, like calling out units and then swinging at rearguard to not give damage, I could understand, because then you're sort of forcing Cogsay to make very awkward decisions, and like sort of trying to force Cogsay to play at your pace. But right now, this feels like it's ill-advised.
It's very looking like Cogsay's game to lose here. We do have that extra counterblast to play with. Between a Nordlinger and also the Gravidia Peters, we do have like that very, very aggressive center column there with that on-hit pressure, but also with that threatening crit as well.
Yep, exactly. I do agree. I think some of that early counterblast now could have been very useful. And also giving Gravidia too much counterblast can be very scary because they can heal back down with the double triggers.
That's true.
Which we could see happening here. It's something as a Gravidia player, I usually try to stay at high damage on purpose, so that way I can keep healing.
Not only that, you can also prevent them from healing as well.
Exactly. And the longer you survive every single turn, you're pretty much asking for a perfect guard in some situations. So.
All right. So here comes the first Gravidia Nordlinger swing.
And this is for 5, right?
Yep, this is the 5.
Yeah, this is 5. This is
Let's
the whole shebang. There's 1 PG down there. Honestly, in Adrian Barber's shoes, I think if there was ever... Ooh,
double
that's
crit.
a good crit. That's a good crit.
Oh, no.
Double crit. Let's go. Let's go. So we're about to see. Just putting all power. And then we got the
Okay.
meteor as well.
And honestly, this could have been avoided if he just swung at the token.
Swung
Wow.
token and pass to not have to deal with the double crit chance.
Yeah.
But at the same time, maybe like force Cogsay to do all the counterblasts here while Adrian Barber has that very large buffer to play with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then here is 4 damage, I believe. 1, 2,
No, 3.
Just 3.
oh, just
Yes.
3, just 3. Okay,
Double trigger makes it so that it's only +2 damage because did not gain any crits off of skills outside of the Vanguard.
right. We've been seeing the rank 8 overtrigger come up so much, doubling the crit that I immediately thought it was going to be a double the crit. But here we have our Bruce ride finally. But as we stated before, Bruce going second. If you read that first text on Bruce's, at the start of your ride phase until end of turn you final rush, this kind of reads similarly to another card that says something about if you did not ride this turn. So the first turn that you're on Bruce, you are very weak. You are very reliant on a lot of these rear guards, specifically that one there. Leonard
Ooh.
should be able to help a lot, but Cogsay should definitely be looking to guard as much as he can.
This is actually very interesting. So I was kind of wondering why Adrian chose to retire that back row grade 1, because I would actually I would prioritize that Shadow Army token because it makes magic and really good numbers all the time. Makes a 30k column pretty much all the time. Makes it really hard to block. Also, that's extra shield in the front row too.
I think the big reason why is because Gravidia Peters actually gives you...
Ooh, okay.
That's an over trigger.
Oh,
So-
perfect.
Oh, but Overtrigger was being swung at rearguard. So, really smart here, actually.
Yes, denying the counter blast.
Denying the counterblast for sure. Forcing Cogsay to go into an incredibly slow turn here. Not having the Meteor play live to be able to get those really scary triggers. Going to go ahead and attack the Leonard there.
That's a
heal. Does not go
Doesn't
off,
go
unfortunately.
off.
Oh.
Wow, what a turnaround! We went from like,
that's a
wow.
front trigger.
Imagine if that was a double trigger turn.
Oh,
Wow.
those would have been huge. The difference one counterblast makes.
Yep. And not running enough countercharger, not even just in this deck, but just in general, you don't have the space for it, and
Yeah.
not being able to utilize it. Very interesting.
I think that's one of the more intriguing things about BRO. In BRO, because the lists are public, Adrian could have known that Cogsay was not on Bulbamine, so there is a lack of countercharge within the deck. Therefore, kind of doing this play, forcing down Cogsay to throw down rear guards as a bait for this very moment where Cogsay wouldn't be able to put up a strong offensive pressure, in which case, as Bruce, you would be able to get to your grade 4 turn, enter final rush without too much of a hassle. And I think that's something I can respect.
Here we are going into the grade 4, and we do have that 10k OT power here coming in, so that Bruce already is going to be pretty scary here. And now
Not
we're doing
only
the full dive
Yeah.
still?
Yep, Hellblast full dive in. Oh, wow, this is a fantastic setup right now.
This setup kind of reminds me of a couple rounds ago. It's almost like we're repeating history here.
Yeah.
Right, here comes Megan.
Man, that means Bruce is at 33 with a crit. This has the same effect as just doing a Pandemonium tactics, but kind of better.
Yeah, in a way, getting the front row, and you're not like blindly soul charging as much. So it's So this is gonna be a pretty aggressive turn here. We have the rear guards coming. The Vanguard be restanding with 33k and a crit,
Yeah.
so very lethal. Megan's gonna be restanding for extra power. And we had the Marjorie over here, also gonna be pretty aggressive here. And Gravidia does draw a lot, but is it enough?
Oh, I wonder if Cogsay has the double PG required for this swing. I was actually kind of intrigued as to why Cogsay was so happy to take these 2 rearguard attacks for damage.
Because any crit checked here is making it one more attack you have to block. Right now, this is a 2 to pass. Ugh.
Out of a triple drive, keep in mind since we're on grade 4 here, that is a crit trigger. Time to really think here.
Give a
This-
crit
yeah.
to a rear guard, because
You honestly should, because it will be restanding with the lethal
Yeah.
anyway, so there's no reason not to.
yeah.
Third check. Okay, good call.
Very
Good
smart.
call.
Yeah.
So you have the Soul Blast skill off of the Bruce skill going for the restance. So here we are back at it again. The whole board pretty much restance.
And
Yep.
this is a really good spot for Adrian right now because that's 2 more attacks that have a crit and huge numbers, and Kagze has to block both of them. And if 1 more crit is checked, then everything can finish the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We do see
what
one
drive?
PG in damage.
Yep.
But one drive could be that trigger. We do know it's not the OT though, so Kagze does have that out of the
It's another.
contention.
Was that one
Okay.
pass?
It was
1-2 pass being able to get guarded. All right,
Ooh.
gonna swing with the
PG?
crit first, obviously.
50 with a crit.
Yeah, that's pretty big. That's pretty big. You can't. That's a lot of cards out of hand, or you need a perfect guard in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And there's how many cards in hand right now?
1, 2,
2.
2
Is that 2
PG
cards?
PG.
Oh.
Over trigger to guard, so we know the
Wow.
over trigger is out of rotation, and Marjorie swings here.
I think you're swinging a rear guard here, right?
I think it's rear guard.
I mean, either
Yeah.
way, yeah. I think it's fine. You do want to. I mean, the counterblasts really don't matter at this point.
Ooh, okay, not
top
a bad
deck!
Not
Yep.
a bad top deck.
Yep.
Not a bad top deck at all. Going to be able to push another meteor into the order zone there. But
That was-
definitely not having a Gravidia, a Nordlinger for the re-ride to get some more meteorite cards into the order zone, get some cards into hand. Definitely a bit painful, but going to be able to go ahead and do the meteor shower here. Wipe the board. Now, luckily for Barber, only presenting 2 rear guards, so that way back to Burrito would not be able to gain that crit, which is at this state of game very, very crucial.
We are seeing that heal also coming back again. Yeah, another matchup where it actually comes in handy because the Vanguard gains a crit here, so this heal is actually a 25k block.
Yeah, so right now, 1 to pass.
Yeah.
This
Or-
game feels like as if we just played. It was if we just saw. It's very similar to play. Right? It's the same units, same triggers, just a different opponent.
Hitting, like, for a 3 to pass here guarantees no hitting because the over trigger's already been seen.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, the Gravidia player only did double. I mean, sorry,
Oh.
not double meteor, only did 3.
Yeah.
So this wasn't
Yeah,
a double
yeah.
turn.
Yeah, no, exactly. So this is a 2 to pass right now. Hitting for a 3 to pass would have been guaranteed no hit because the over trigger's already been seen.
Exactly.
Meteor
Oh
grade
my-
3. I think what's most important to know about that is how little shield those cards are worth.
Yup.
For sure.
That is indeed a shieldless situation to be in, and honestly, you can still attack here, or are they passing?
Yeah, just
It
pass.
looks like they chose to pass. I can kind of respect this. I would definitely
Mm-hmm. Oh,
have
not
checked the
enough
soul
soul.
first.
Yep.
So denying one
Nope.
counterblast to not let them use like
A
any
pendulum
kind of like
or anything.
hand
yeah.
attack or anything that would gain soul.
That's enough. Oh my!
But Marjorie
again!
and Megan is
Marjorie,
definitely
Megan,
enough.
those are good cards. Those are pretty good cards.
So Marjorie would get the extra soul going. So I think that restand will still be happening here in this
It's the
case.
same setup as last turn, but without
Yup.
the full dive.
Yup, literally the same thing. And the 10k and the crit is back off of the over trigger here, and then Megan's going in, getting the extra power.
Yeah.
We're pretty much
3
doing the same
cards
thing
in
we did
hand.
last time.
3 cards in hand, and 2 of them are not able to be used to block. This is not looking good for Cogs.
Yep, we'll see kind of here comes Marjorie's skill getting the extra 10k power. And it's kind of hard to say, like, what do you do here? Do you guard this, take the Vanguard, or, take this? You're kind of playing a weird situation here because their Vanguard has an extra crit on it, too.
And not. Oh wow.
Okay, and that will be the game.
Yep.
Only had one available card to guard with in that front trigger. So needed to use that 1 card guard very wisely, and definitely did have to play on that 6 damage shield trigger. Maybe that's 6, maybe that's 7th damage shield trigger even, but Cogsay did what Cogsay needed to do, and big props to Adrian Barber for kind of puppeteering that situation that put Cogsay and that 0 counterblast turn where Cogsay could have gone for lethal there. So
Yep.
big props to both players there.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of counterblast denial being played, and like a lot of people talk about like, oh, like what do you is there ever really a reason to counterblast deny? We saw a really well represented game where both players were really utilizing the concept of counterblast denying from both sides. Both players were definitely trying to outplay each other in what their decks do.
And honestly, had me fooled too, because I was like, why are you not counterblast denying right here? It was to then bait into burning that counterblast too early before it
Yep.
actually mattered.
Yeah.
And
And
that was the
even
big thing.
Yep. And even using the 5 meteors that early, because honestly, personally, I feel like the earlier the video player uses the meteors, the better it is, because there's still a lot of deck, right? So there's a lower chance for them to hit like crits, right? Whereas later on, once they start going for the 5 meteors, when you only have like 10 cards left in deck, there's a higher chance, especially if you're deck thinning and persona writing and all that kind of stuff. So honestly, I always feel like early on, Gravidia isn't as scary as Gravidia is later on. So you usually are okay with them using and doing their thing early and then kind of stopping and starting to slow it down later on. Especially in a deck like this where it's playing the world orders and they're a little bit more focused on a tempo-based deck. They can't 5 meteor every single turn.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So like, yeah, once again, big props to Adrian for like bamboozling us as well. I think we were all criticizing like, oh, I think maybe this should have been the counterblast now, but Adrian was on the counterblast now game plan, but just like we said, chose for the more opportune time to do the counterblast denial. We saw Adrian do that incredibly heavy guarding in the early game, like just deciding to like throw down as many cards as possible, stay at 0 damage. So on the turn that Gravidian Orlinger does that double trigger thing, if crits do pop up and we are unable to guard it, we have 6 damage to buffer with.
Yep, exactly. Because sometimes that's kind of where it's so scary. You really don't want to see an over trigger in those type of situations. That's pretty much how you essentially just get knocked out like that. I guess not necessarily thankfully, but luckily enough, we weren't in that situation where we saw that. We saw some crits, but we didn't see like that full like double OT type of like unga boonga type of style.
Yeah. And honestly, that's like this game was sort of a display of like that different set of skills that Standard emphasizes over other formats as well. Like Standard emphasizes those small decisions and like sort of knowing when to do your big play. Because say for example V Premium or Premium, you want to like do your thing as soon as possible normally. With this, it's like you have to time it well. And this was an example of like, okay, I'm baiting him to time it at like a poor time. Or like baiting him to use it at a time where I want him to use it instead of when he should use it. And being able to do that was very much the reason why he won.
Now, with that being said, that was round 8 of Swiss, and we are just going to start building the bracket to show off our top 8 that we will see tomorrow. So we're going to go ahead and take you guys to a short break as we get that ready for when we come back. Thank you very much for watching.
Hello, and welcome back to Bushiroad Rumble Online. We are back now. The rounds are pretty much finished. We're just going to be waiting on the brackets and getting ready for top 8. So how do you guys feel?
I'm feeling good. We are going through the tournament at a very breakneck pace. It keeps everybody's mentality fresh. Definitely the players as well into account. Once we start getting into like the later stages of the tournament, that's when mental fatigue sets in. But being able to go through these games like snap, and that is one of the features of Standard as well. It is a slower format in the terms of the game tempo, but speed-wise, it is a bit faster, which helps us get more of these games in for you guys, for us, and definitely for the players as well. Peter, the Gobbler of Gluteus Maximus, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. Feeling pretty energized right now, despite us going through 8 whole rounds of this tournament. Although we did only stream 7 of them. And honestly,
got some extra games though. We got good value out of these rounds today.
That's true. You viewers at home, you got more than just 7 games. You got 10 games because there were 3 extra games. 1 extra in one of the rounds and then 2 extra in the other one. So pretty lucky.
And you basically got to watch an episode of the anime, but a what-if version. What if Kai won? What it would look like.
That's
it looks
very
like
true.
double crits, and that's what it looks like.
The anime protagonist skill on swing, crit, power, Vanguard. So let's quickly run over the schedule again, just so you guys have it fresh in the top of your head. as we get into and wind down the first day of Bushiroad Rumble Online 2022 for the standard format. So for the schedule, this is week 3. We had 2 weeks already in Bushiroad Rumble Online. The first week featuring the premium format and the second week featuring the V premium format. And this week, week number 3, will be the standard format as you saw today. Today was the start of the tournament, starting very nicely. And tomorrow will be the top 8 for you guys. And you will have all 3 of us casting each of those games for you. Taking a look at week number 4, because Bushiroad Rumble Online 2022 is not just about Vanguard. We also have the card games that all anime lovers love, and that is Weiss Schwarz. If there's an anime that you love, chances are it's probably in Weiss Schwarz. Next week, we have on day 1, similarly to every other tournament, we've got the Swiss format, and day 2, the day right after, we have our top cut. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the final week, and that is Weiss Schwarz. So,
yes.
Bring it back to us. What are you guys excited for? We know some of the decks that we will probably be seeing in top 8. Adrian Barber managing to go clean through Swiss, Kogze being second place, having lost to Adrian Barber that we just saw on stream. So we already know about a Bruce. We already know about a Grip Video World. But speaking about a fall from grace, haven't seen a Bastion at all today. And there's a lot of decks that were heavily talked about that kind of flew under the radar. Orange, what's a deck that you were hoping to see that just kind of has completely missed the radar?
Though we did see it, but we didn't see it in full action. But the PBO has been pretty quiet, and Flagberg has definitely been pretty quiet. And then another one is definitely Bastion. I feel like that deck hasn't changed too much. But we haven't been seeing too many results on that side of things as far as I know. Not 100% aware of what this top 8 is going to look like, right? Mm-hmm. So there's definitely that. I'm trying to think if there's any other decks that kind of should be in top 8, but we're not too sure if we're going to see it. So, I think we kind of hit a lot of the main ones. Because there's actually quite a lot of good decks, and there's more good decks than there are bad decks, I guess is the best way to put it. Peter, I see you have something you want to say.
Yes. Prison. That's one that we don't know if it's in top 8 because last time we saw it, it was either one of the X1s or X2s early in the tournament. So, and that's the only Prison we've seen at all. And that was one of the extra games that was for streams. So we might not get a Prison in top 8, which would be crazy to me because Prison's a very good deck. And honestly, I think the fact that it's even up for contention if it gets into top 8 would be so unfortunate.
I think another point of discussion as well is something I mentioned way back at the beginning of the stream was talking about the new heal triggers that we got in Festival Collection. I was at the beginning of the tournament, I was on the board of yo, I don't think these are good. They're too hyper specific. I don't think the matchups really call for them. But Adrian in round 8 and in round 7 being able to use the crit, the heal trigger that gets stronger based on the crit, coming in huge and showing us that in a meta where these kind of effects are very prevalent, these heal triggers do come in big.
Yeah. Surprisingly enough, though I do think that it's the better of the heals, which is why Adrian's winning 4 of them. But I think the crit heal is definitely the better of the two, because there's just a bunch of stuff that gains crits. You have Bear Magnus, you have Bruce, we got the dragons from Zorga, we got Buff Sagara. I don't know if I'm missing anything. Gravidia Mirrors, Gravidia and Gravidia Mirrors, all that kind of stuff. They all gain crits as well, and PBO gains a crit too, which by the way was a deck that people were expecting to see today. That's quite a lot of decks that are pretty prevalent in the meta, and they also it works. And this at 25k shield early on, it's not as great, but later on in those later turns when you really need it, 25k shield is quite a lot. So I do kind of see the reason to play them, at least currently. I think there's enough decks to maybe go a 2-2 splits. The 4 is pretty wild for me to see personally. It's very bold. It's very bold.
Yeah, it's a lot of commitment for deck slots, but also losing in a matchup where you're not playing against those decks that gain the natural crit. You're basically throwing away a good 20k amount of shield.
Just wondering what decks are even out there that would be it's Flagberg, right? And then
Flagberg. Well, the thing about Flagberg is technically, depending on the build of Flagberg, you could use both of them. You could use either one of the heals because some of the builds run Nectar.
True.
Yeah.
That is true. I'm one of those people that runs Nectar. Yeah, that is true. I kind of forgot about Nectar for a second, but yeah, Nectar would be a reason to. I think that would be the more approach towards. Like, I guess in that case it would work, but I feel like most there aren't that many decks. So there's like the lower decks that aren't as popular. So like all the aside from Kyrie, Kyrie's one of the decks where the heals don't really matter too much.
Yeah.
And then pretty much all the lyrical decks, I don't think the heals have any effect towards. So those don't matter. Eugene is another deck. I think Hexa Orb is part of this list too. But they're really, if you really think about it, all those decks aren't, aside from Kyrie, all those decks aren't very played. And then there's also Greedon. Greedon's another one. And if you really break it down, there's Chaos too, but there aren't that many. All the decks I'm bringing up are all decks that aren't like really showing much. Because even if you think about Record of Ragnarok also gets crits to its rear guards and vanguards that also be, you'd want to go for the crit heal. So if you were to think like, hey, because Record of Ragnarok just came out, maybe I'll see it today, the crit heal would be the better option as well in that case. So it's kind of not a terrible choice, I guess. Like, some people are for, some people are against. I'm in the middle. I've been kind of in the middle where I'm like, I think they're good. I don't think they're bad. I kind of think that if you want to play them, sure. If you don't, that's understandable too. It's not as different as the heal guarding versus the regular vanillas. I feel like that's a little bit more, it's kind of obvious which decks play and which decks don't type of thing. Where here, I think either way, you're fine, especially as meta shifts between decks to deck.
I actually did check just now Adrian's list, and he actually isn't running 4 of the of that special heal. He's actually running a 2-2 split, with one of them being the World Original and one of them being the start deck version of the Diabolos.
Maybe I saw the 2 and I thought it was 4.
The big text box.
Something.
Yeah.
The text box is confusing,
The
man.
text boxes are huge.
It's losing me today.
I have
it's
a playset of SP.
Gotta be effects. Huge text box. But I do remember we did have a player that did choose to go all in on those effect heals.
I saw 4 somewhere.
Yeah. But yeah, like maybe like having like just even like one of those heals, so that way like when it does come up, you have that extra 5k, extra 10k shield actually compared to the vanilla heals, and sometimes those extra 10ks do make a difference. It's basically a defensive trigger's worth of power, and and then I guess if we want to talk about like the units that gain that base crit, there's also a lot of like decks, and maybe that's why they're not showing up, because like the decks that do the restand aren't just as strong anymore. So main deck that does the restanding, Bastion, being able to restand the field, maybe just not as strong as we had hoped going into this next format, and we needed to do a more aggressive with crit threat. Same thing with Nirvana. Nirvana, though, being able to like do the Mahar, re-ride Mahar, or like Mahar ping, re-ride Mahar ping, to push our opponent to 5 damage and then swing with our Esperagias. Also a restanding where those heals would come in. Still didn't see those too much. The one time we did see it, it got eaten up by Prison.
18 imprisoned.
18 in prison. 45k to the front, by the way. Front trigger, we make our own front triggers. Now, speaking of that, let's go ahead and take a look at the bracket, where we're going to take a look at our top 8 that we will see tomorrow.
Ooh.
Coming off the top, we have our clean through Swiss winner, Adrian Barber versus the Gumi guy.
And we've got right below that Kisa sitting at a solid 4th, going against G, President of the World. How about you give us the next ones, Orange?
Yep. We got Kaze versus Dono Vantex 8. And then take it away, Toku, for the last one.
All right, and finally, wrapping us up off for our top 8 that you guys will see tomorrow, we have Lu versus Yusha from the MT Clan. So, everybody watching, these will be your top 8 contenders for the Bushiroad Rumble Online Cardfight Vanguard Standard 2022 tomorrow, that will be fighting for that very coveted top 4 prizing.
Pretty exciting. I'm pretty excited to see kind of how this all plays out. And I personally don't know what half those decks are.
Yeah, we saw a bunch of names that like just all of a sudden like out of nowhere
showed up,
swang on up. So I'm very excited to see what kind of decks they'll be bringing. Maybe like once we get some data analysis going on there tomorrow, we'll definitely be able to see what decks are bringing, give our own insights and thoughts for that. But this will kind of wrap it up from us. Orange, do you have any closing statements?
Yeah, as always, thank you for coming by, watching us talk, watching the games, watching the players do their thing. Much appreciated. Thank you for being here with us today. I think it's been a really fun tournament so far. Very well-paced tournament. I think overall it just went pretty fast. So thank you for watching with us. And yeah, we're just really excited for top 8 tomorrow. So don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere tomorrow. You gotta see that top 8. What about you, Peter?
Before we go, though, we do have some tweets from hashtag BRO2022.
Oh.
Okay.
One from Aries, the one player that was 7-1 that did not make it into the top 8, saying that this is some emotional damage right here.
Emotional damage!
Getting bubbled out again. Unfortunate. And it turns out that he had lost in the first round and won every single round after that. Oh,
that's resistances coming up to hit you guys right there. But
that's
yeah,
a big sad.
coming up strong at 9th. Unfortunately, still not enough to get into the top 8. But Peter, give me your closing statements.
Well, thank you all for watching. Also, as I always do, I like to thank all my locals. Thank you to Curio Cavern, Centerville, and Springfield locations, Guild Gaming, Woodbridge, and Fair Oaks locations. Superstar Card Gaming, let's see, hashtag Gaming Arena, and Gritty Goblin Games. Thank you all for providing me a community, because remember, everyone, you are nothing without your community. No monster is made on their own.
And with that about sums it up from us, and we will see you guys tomorrow for the top 8.
Yay! Bye, guys. Bye.